So much for that.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our virtual budget work session number 4. It is now 8 p.m. and we will get started. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, City Manager.
Oh, thank you, sir. We'll start out with the with our police department. That's in page 79 in the proposed budget. The police department protects the lives and properties of our citizens and businesses while focusing on proactive community engagement, trust building, and responsiveness. Duties include patrol, responding to calls for service, identifying and apprehending suspected criminals, traffic safety enforcement, along with community service and events. Of course, our department coordinates and works with all agencies in the area. Also, they have a very robust community connection, and best I've seen in my 20 years in the business. Their objectives for 2020 was to create 24-hour dispatch supervising by eliminating the vacant assistant communication supervisor and transitioning 4 of its existing communication specialist 2 positions into a communication specialist 3 position by June 30. That objective was complete. Objective B and C had to be postponed. The reason being is that the police were trying to hire a crime scene investigator so that they could stand up an evidence processing unit. We had little success in our recruiting effort, and it had to be restarted, and we're in the process of doing it now. So that was postponed to 2021 because we didn't get the persons we needed to start the unit. D, convert the administrative assistant's position to a public information and intelligence specialist by January 2020, and that objective was completed. If you look at the workload and performance indicators for the police department, you'll see that the moving violations component goes from 13,331 to 15,888, and that's because of between 18 and 19, because there were more concentrated efforts on traffic enforcement and neighborhood safety, and in many cases at the request of the residents themselves. The objectives for fiscal year 2021, to reduce the overall crime rate by 10% with a focus on theft from autos through a broad and varied educational campaign and enforcement strategies. The results will be measured in the calendar year 2020 through 2021. Assume investigative responsibility for commercial and residential robberies by June 30, 2021. That's contingent on our ability to hire the right crime scene investigation specialists. Number 3 there, and implement the drone program to assist with missing persons, suspect searches, crash investigations, and other city-related duties. 4 there, convert the existing SUV into an equipment tactical vehicle for 24-hour patrol use to ensure the tactical response equipment is readily available, and that's scheduled to be completed by December 2020. There are no significant budgetary changes in the police department this year. The current FTE count in the police department is 88 persons, 67 of which would be sworn officers. Therefore, with that many people, there's almost an $8 million salary and wages budget. The fringe benefits are roughly at $4.3 million, understandably, and there's an exceptional expense in the speed cameras and professional services, and with $456,900, and that contractual service. Travel and training has an expense. Of course, we have to train our police officers in various things, and maintenance of vehicles. You may know that the police department maintains its own vehicles using a contractor, and that's what that money's for. And the commodities, 205,500, We have a full-service police department, and it costs money to maintain the equipment and materials for that. And of course, the purchase of gasoline and oil and tires and other things for the vehicles that we have. Weapons training and ammunition, $83,700 there, and protective apparel for the police department is $98,200. Are there any questions for Chief Neske or I regarding the police department and/or suggestions?
Yes, I have a couple questions for you. On the objectives for 2021, we have the drone program. Is there coordination that we're going to have to do with Homeland Security on that for flights and so forth?
There are FAA regulations that we would have to follow and go through, and all that will be covered extensively through the training. Whether Homeland Security plays into that or not depends on where we go and what we're doing, but there are regulations in place that we would have to abide under.
Okay, and thank you. And can you help me out with what equipment we're expecting to supply this SUV vehicle, this number 4 item as well?
Sure, it's the equipment is stuff we already have. All we're going to do is outfit it so we can have it securely mounted and accessible. What we find is we don't have the capacity to carry shields and things like that that we could use to deal with an active shooter. Active shooter kits that we have in individual cruisers maybe not are not of the grade that we need to be if we need to ram a gate to get into a fenced-in enclosure, if we need to force our way into the backside of a building, if we have an active shooter. So the goal is to have that outfitted, all the equipment in one spot in a vehicle, have that vehicle accessible 24/7 on the road, so we aren't responding back to the station to try to get the equipment and then get it out to where it's needed.
I see. So you intend to deploy it kind of in a constant moving. Is there a thought about just having it centrally deployed for periods of time so you don't have to have it always on the move?
Well, again, it's going to be folded into the patrol aspect. So someone in that shift would use that as their patrol vehicle. So it's not going to be just roaming and hoping. It's going to fulfill a purpose during the shift.
Thank you. A couple other questions for you. On page 81, we make mention of the speed camera program. Can you give me an update on where we are with assessing relocating speed cameras as part of the renewal of the contract? Particularly, I'm of course interested in speed camera position or location on Tulip Grove near the school.
Of course, sir. That is part of our process. Unfortunately, the process got derailed with the COVID, but that is conversations that we're having with the vendor to try to make that happen. So it is still on the table.
Thank you. And then the other is, I understand the police department arranges for the maintenance. With whom are we engaged to do that maintenance?
We compared, I think about a year or so ago, we compared prices with a number of different vendors. What we were finding is Ford handles that. They give us a good discount on both labor and materials, and it's helpful for us to have a complete computerized log of each vehicle through the dealership. So we go through the 4 dealerships now with their fleet maintenance program, which gives us a substantial discount on parts and labor.
Okay. And I would assume that they are equipped to take care of all the, obviously if they're Fords to begin with, to take care of all the special amenities associated with police vehicles.
Correct. Now, if it is a lighting issue, then we take it back to that particular vendor that did the upfitting of the vehicles. But routine maintenance and those things are handled by Ford.
Okay, thank you. And the IT infrastructure we take care of?
I'm sorry, sir, you cut out.
The IT infrastructure, the computer setups in the squad cars, we take care of that with our internal department, correct?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Hey, this is Roxy. I've got a couple questions. When I look at the plan and kind of just hear everyone talk about it, I see that you're using a lot of, in your efforts to, I guess you would say, scale everything, you're using a lot of manpower. So like, how are you planning on incorporating technology? I see the drone kind of program to assist with stuff like that, and I'd love to get more information on what that looks like. I don't know if that's something that you can share or that can be made privy to the public, but I'd like to understand that more. And then I'd like to understand, just as, you know, the world evolves and technology begins to continue to play a significant role in things, how do you plan on using that and leveraging technology to be able to help you and the police force be able to scale at a much more quicker rate or solve crimes or things of that nature?
Sure. The drone is one step. The drone is going to be used for a multiple purposes. It can be used for missing persons, and that's one of the things that we started thinking about mostly because we've had a couple of our seniors wander with dementia. They go deep in the wood line. We had trouble locating and getting to them in the rain one particular evening. So we thought a drone would be helpful for that. A lot of the complaints that we get along the paths and the gazebos back there for possible drug use, we can cover more ground with a drone back there. We can do suspect searches with it if we have somebody that's trying to elude us on foot. But it's also not just for us. We can also help Public Works if they need to do a water tower inspection. They don't necessarily have to have somebody climb the tower. They can use the drone to do their inspection and only have to send somebody up and use that expense or that manpower when it's needed. So that's going to be one of the very first things that we're doing. We're also looking at utilizing some tracking devices, for lack of a better term, for some of our at-risk population. Folks with maybe autism that wander, or some of our dementia folks that tend to wander. We're looking at two different programs. One is GPS based, and one is more of a locational base, more like the LoJack, which gives you a general area but not pinpoint locations. So again, we're trying to, as you say, leverage technology to try to make our jobs a little more effective and easier, and also safer. As we move forward with the speed cameras, that was a great force multiplier when we started that program. So we will continue to utilize those things and keep our ear to the ground to look at new opportunities for that.
And maybe that's something that I can, I guess, work with you on or help with, because I know one of the prime areas of feedback that I hear is that a lot of residents feel like they don't necessarily see our police force enough. And I know we've talked about that issue on a number of different occasions, and staffing being kind of like short across the United States, just for the police force in general. So I kind of see do a little bit more, or have a little bit more effort around how we scale technology to help residents feel a lot more safe. And I understand that sorry, there's a lark echo. I understand that there's a program supplement here to kind of help the city of Bowie residents with installing cameras, so that's a really great step in the right direction, but I'd love to see like a little bit more around that, and I'm happy to work with you on that, just so our residents can continue to feel safe, and it can just help you multiply during this time where, you're having, or the United States is just having a lot of difficulty attracting people to become police officers and things like that.
Certainly, I'd be happy to sit down and listen to whatever ideas you have.
And then last question from you, where and at what part of the budget is the drone program? Like, where does that go into?
It's Sure, it's divided up into two different categories. The materials and supplies has the actual cost of the drone, and then the training for our pilots is included in our travel and training.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, I have one quick follow-up question, if I may. Chief, can you confirm for me, are we still looking at the ring program for the cameras?
Yes, that was one of the supplements under let's see, under program supplements, out of the 30,000, part of that is for the camera program.
Excellent, thank you. I appreciate that. I know it's been a while coming, but I'm glad to see it there. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good. If there are any other questions or comments or suggestions for the police department?
I have one more question. With the ring program, do we have a process in place for that? I'd just like to understand what that process actually is.
Sure. What we're looking at, it's a dual rebate. So we would contribute part of like $50 towards the camera, and Ring would donate or contribute $50 towards the camera. So it'd be a total of $100. So what we'll do is, as the budget's approved and we move forward, there will be a process for applying for the grant. What that looks like and exactly, I don't know at this point yet, but there will be a formal process to access it.
Okay, awesome. I would just want to make sure that we kind of go over that when we get to the communication portion of it. Make sure that residents understand how to access that and how to apply for that amplified, because that's a big deal right there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then.
And one last word from me. Thank you so much for all the good work you guys do. Your officers are greatly appreciated, their service, and even in this time in particular with all that going on. It's a welcome sight for a lot of folks. Thank you, and please extend my gratitude and that of all the council.
Will do, sir. Thank you.
All right, then. If there are no other questions for the police department, we'll move to the city manager's division, which is started on page 53 with the city council's budget. Thank you, Chief. The city council is the governing body of the city, elected by and responsible to the voters for the operation of the city. The council is responsible for municipal policies. The council appoints a city manager, city attorney, board of supervisors for election, all standing advisory committees, special task force groups, and study committees. For fiscal year 2021, there's one objective, which is to conduct strategic planning retreat to develop mission, vision, and strategic objectives for the city council. There were no objectives set for 2020 that we can ascertain. The FTE 7 people, 100, and the salaries 122,600. Fringe benefits at 9,700. Professional services $65,000 for the lobbyists and other consultants. We have $20,000 for travel and training related with the MML, Fall Conference, National League of Cities, and others. And there was under other charges, subscriptions and memberships, $100,300 for Maryland Municipal League, Council of Government, COG, Regional Environmental Fund, National League of Cities, Prince George's County Municipal Association, and Bowie Chamber of Commerce. These are subscriptions and memberships for that. That concludes the City Council's budget. Are there any questions or comments regarding that?
Quick question, Mr. City Manager. Under communications, I see $700 for cellular communication equipment. Can you elaborate on what that is?
That's cellular phones. One cell phone. That's the mayor's cell phone.
Mayor's cell phone. Okay.
Yes.
And then there was a 64.7 increase in commodities. Can you explain the reasoning for that?
I'm sorry, you broke up, sir. What did you say again?
Yeah, there's a 64.7% decrease in commodities. It looks like it came out of office supplies. Am I correct in that?
Yes, there was something that the council was interested in doing last year. It was I believe it was a commemorative plaque that actually ended up not getting executed and done. So those dollars are no longer in the budget this year, since that was a one-time expense that actually didn't happen.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
All right then, we'll move to city manager's budget. The city manager is the chief administrating officer of the city. He or she supervises all staff and is responsible for the effective management of all financial and administrative actions of the city. The city manager is appointed by and serves at the pleasure of the city council. He is responsible for implementing all policy matters established by the council and for the enforcement of all city ordinances. City manager keeps the city council informed through a variety of reporting procedures that assist the council in its policy-making role. And if you look at our objective for 2020, we were first to develop evaluate options for future management of the golf course. We did that. The consultant briefed the city council, and we discussed that in the CIP. And that was completed. B was to establish a series of retreats after the election to discuss strategic objectives adopted by the council at previous planning sessions and incorporate consensus into day-to-day operations structure of the city. We held several orientation meetings outside the regularly scheduled business meetings. The council has held a series of community listening sessions through February of 2020 to hear directly from the constituents and inform perspectives to guide it in our strategic objective development. Our indicators are not much changed. Our objective for 2020 is to plan and conduct a staff retreat in the first half of fiscal year. Of course, that's COVID-19 contingent. There are no significant changes in that budget for this year. There are just for the audience to make sure they understand, within the city manager's office itself, there is a city manager, assistant city manager, director of grants, grants manager, grants writer, grants intern, an executive office manager, a part-time risk manager, and a part-time office of grants person, well, formerly, no longer, but it used to be. So right now, primarily salaries and wages, $811,400. 272 on fringe benefits. Contractual expenses are significant in that we have a consultant to assist the city in managing electricity and natural gas contracts with us, and there's a fair housing training associated with the CDBG program also. Travel and training is the ICMA conference and Maryland Municipal League, and also under other charges, municipal grants, the CDBG program to provide financial assistance to home repairs, that's $156,600. And then there's subscriptions and membership, primarily ICMA for Dan and I, which is the International City County Managers Association. Are there any questions or comments about the city manager's budget proper?
Yeah, just a few questions for clarification, Mr. City Manager, if you may. The first falls under contractual services. It's my understanding in FY20, we did have the natural gas contract as well as the fair housing training and the community block grant, right? So where's the, it looks like it's a $30,000 increase. Where's that? Can you explain that?
Go ahead.
Good evening, Councilman. There are two consultants in this budget. One is dealing with the grants for the fair housing training, and the other one is a housing consultant dealing with the Medford properties.
Yes, the Melford properties associated with that development, we have to be able to manage affordable housing applications. And so that is the reason for the additional, and we're going to use a consultant to help us do that.
So the additional $30,100 is for, maybe I didn't hear you correctly. Is that because of the Melford development that there's an increase in the consultant fee? Still, I'm missing that.
Explain it to me.
Yes, it's an additional fee to contract a consultant to assist the city in its fair housing program.
And it is because of, yes, to answer your question, because of the Melford development and the fact that they're building housing that fall under that category, is our obligation as a city to be able to, in order to keep our federal funding, to manage and take applications and process the fair housing component of that, affordable housing component of that development.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
I guess I have a follow-up to that, to Mayor Pro Tem Balako's question. So with that consultant that we are hiring to work on that, so I'm assuming that the grants manager, the grants writer, and the grants intern don't have that expertise. So that's not that they could possibly train on, or we could. I guess I'm just trying to understand the need for the additional staff. It looks like you have 3 people that focus on grants.
Well, to answer your question, you're right. It's completely out of their area of expertise and level of management. They are worker levels who accept grants and process them. And this person has to be somebody who has managed HUD-related housing issues before, taken these, and is in a business of dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's associated with taking an affordable housing application so that we can meet the standards of the federal agency, HUD, and we don't have anybody on our staff who can do that. And so that's why we're going to contract.
Thanks for that.
Another question just for clarification. There are other churches that talk about grants. Those are internal grants that we're providing, right, to seniors?
Yes. If you talk, I've heard you right. You're talking about the renovation of homes. Is that the grant program you're talking? Yeah. That primarily goes to seniors, but it could be other people who fall into the financial category too.
Okay. And the decrease from this year to last year, is it a demand thing? It's kind of the rationale there.
Go ahead and answer.
Councilman, all of the grants that we've been referring to in this section are supported by the grant that we get from HUD. There's no city money involved with this expenditure.
Yeah, this is our expending of the Community Development Block Grant.
So it's an outside?
It's a federal, throughput.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay, all right then. The Human Resources Department Division, and Mr. Haley should be out there on Teams, is next. Our HR office provides services, support, and staffing and solutions to the city operations, taking a leading role in vital areas such as talent acquisition, employee labor relations, benefits administration, performance management, compensation analysis, and compensation analysis. This is the primary objective of this office, to ensure that the city of Bowie maintains the most talented, highly engaged, and well-equipped staff as possible. In 2020, one of our objectives there was to develop and present a proposal to improve the current Employee Recognition Incentive Fund. That is currently being internally developed strategies while reviewing the programs and utilizing peer cities and other similar agencies. This was completed in February of 2020. B there was identify and evaluate and assess new initiatives to ensure the city remains competitive with regard to recruitment, talent acquisition, and this also included an analysis of effective teleworking and other alternate work schedules. This would have been absent the COVID-19, we would have had to make a cultural transition and teleworking and alternate work, but because of COVID, we consumed this from the fire hose, and we got really good at it, and we have more than 120 employees who are teleworking. Many of them have not been in the office in 5 weeks, but are effectively making it happen. And we owe that success to our IT department. They adjusted to the situation and utilizing the available technology made it easy for us to transition and have everybody who should work from home or could work from home be able to do so, access their desktops and everything they need to do their work. And so we accomplished that one in spades, thanks to COVID-19. C, provide enhanced diversity training seminar, which will include a subject matter expert directed related to LGBTQ sensitivity by February 29th of 2020. We think we conducted one of the seminars, and we have not been able to conduct the other. That was slowed down by COVID, but we intend to complete this before the end of the year. Complete 8 employee wellness activities, including lunch learning, seminars, a health fair, employees challenges by June 30, 2020. This is on schedule. 3 items completed thus far, and we're looking to do as many as we can between now and the end of June. Hopefully we'll, if the stay-at-home order is lifted before June, we can accomplish more of these by the end of the fiscal year. Looking at the workload and performance indicators, there is one big number there you'll see between 2020 and 2021. There's an application processing. We expect to see 800 more applications. That's because we intend to become more rigorous and more aggressive in our recruiting, and so that we can screen as many competent employees as we can, barring any freezes in employment associated with budget shortfalls. Objectives for the fiscal year 2021 to ensure all preparations to complete are complete for successful migration to electronic format for the 2021 open enrollment process by September 2020. Hire a consultant firm to conduct a comprehensive classification and compensation study for all positions. Hoping to do that by next year. It's been, I think, more than 7 years since one's been completed. Complete 8 employee wellness activities, as we mentioned before, in fiscal year 2021. There are 6 people in the HR division. There was a consolidation. There was an HR person in the police department. That's what was consolidated last year, the year before, and making us more efficient, more effective. Right now, the HR department is, they're the poster children for teleworking because they're really being effective while doing so. $408,800 in salaries, $121,500 in fringe benefits, professional services, training, of course, that's where a lot of the money goes. We have to, and number below that, there's $69,500 physical exams for new employees, advertising for vacant positions, and travel and training for, including mileage for people training on city business. That's the end of the HR division. Any questions or comments or recommendations?
Yeah, really quick, Mr. City Manager. Let me start off by saying, Mr. Haley, thank you for your leadership in this time, especially for supporting our staff and getting them the resources that they need, the questions that they may have that are HR related. Have we onboarded new hires more this year, this fiscal year, that we're currently in, or last year?
It would be last year, and part of the reason, excuse me, for the leap that the city manager mentioned in terms of our anticipated number of recruitments processed for next year is in part, frankly, I guess it's a good thing, is the economy has been such that we really have not done as many recruitments as we had in the past. And our applicant pool, as a result of that, just hasn't been as large. It's a bit of a prediction, that we came up with, and assuming this was prior to the onset of the pandemic, that we probably would be in a position where we do a little more recruiting and get back to closer to where we were. And so that's why we predicted an uptick in
Sounds good. Thank you so much for the clarification.
I've got a quick question. Actually, it's back on the under the city manager's office. Under workload and performance indicators, I see that the operating expenditures per capita went up. Can someone just help me understand? Because it looks like the number of residents per city employees went down in FY21, and then the city manager activity expenditures per capita went down. So I'm just trying to understand how we are tracking in the operating expenditures going up and how that's being calculated.
Councilwoman, the operating expenditures are calculated by looking at what a department's expenses over what the total budget for the general fund is. That's how we determine the percentage amount. The other is done per population for the city.
Okay, thank you.
If there aren't any other questions about HR, I'll go to elections on page 60. This activity provides administrative, secretarial, clerical services for city elections, including voters registration, records keeping, furnishes voting and registration information to Bowie residents and other government bodies and agencies. Objectives of this activity are to encourage all eligible residents of the city of Bowie to register and vote in all city elections, provided adequate information to our residents, continually improve and update the city's voting regulations and records. The objectives for 2020 were to work with the Elections Task Force in reviewing the city's election laws in the charter and code. The task force was to begin in 2020. We still need to we still need the appointments by the council to get the task force going, I understand. B, continue to work with the County Board of Elections to update the city streets list as homes are built and properties are annexed. We haven't annexed anything lately. Throughout the year, the city clerk has done this comparison scrub with the county. Also, to develop a election handbook for candidates and administer the city elections on November 2019. We have completed that objective, and the city used an e-poll for the first time in the election, and was well received by both election workers and voters. Objectives for 2021 are to work with the election task force in updating the election laws, and continue to work with the County Board of Elections on updated city street lists as homes are built and properties are annexed, whenever that should happen. Under expenses, primarily there's $500 for commodities and such. This is not election year, so this is a lower budget. Any questions about elections? If there aren't any, let's move on. Please.
Sorry about that. I slow on the mute button. Question for you on the task force. Actually, it's Wilda. I believe you've got my appointment name, correct?
Yes, so I've gotten some names. I just don't have one from every person yet.
All right. Thank you. Can you send us a reminder?
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay then, off to page 61, legal services. This office provides legal services and advice to the city council and city staff. The city attorney attends council meetings, represents the city in legal proceedings, both before the courts and in administrative agencies, reviews contracts, leases, covenants, prepares ordinances and resolutions. The office also provides advice to the city and state legislation where required. The city retains several law firms with differing specialties to handle such matters as bond issues, IRS tax issues, cable franchise issues, and separate legal counsel is also retained to support the Ethics Commission, the Board of Personal Appeals, telecommunications legislation and cable franchise, as I mentioned earlier. And the city is also represented without cost beyond the payment of premiums by attorneys appointed by Legit, the local government insurance company, insurance trust, to represent the city in connection with and the defense in certain civil actions. There are no significant budget changes there. We have proposed $200,000 in professional services, most of which would be legal fees, to support the missions the aforementioned missions. Any questions about legal services? If there aren't any, we'll proceed to the Communications Division of the City Manager's Office. And Ona should be out there on Teams, ready to participate. This division is responsible for providing residents with current information on the city events, city services and policies through monthly newsletters, press releases, city websites, social media, and cable television. It also broadcasts the city council meetings and special events. A little history here for those of you new to council. On January 3rd of 2017, which happened to be my first meeting here at the city council, the subject of the marketplace was up for discussion. The room was filled with people, and I think our overflow seats were also filled. And the city voted to support the marketplace, but the residents specifically claimed and complained that they were unaware of what was happening and what was going on, and that a vote was going to be held and what the ramifications would be of voting to support apartments at the marketplace. Well, based on that date, I didn't quit. I continued to work here, even though I was beat up. I was significantly abused by the residents that day in my initiation. I decided that what we really needed to do, and based on my experiences in local government, was develop a concrete communications plan, and that was centralized, that was comprehensive, that placed specific requirements on departments to do certain things and channel them through our communications director. At the time, Ms. Cooper was a one-person operation, and we have changed that, and now there are two additional employees. We have a person, Stephanie, who handles all of our social media, and all of you know Sonia. She is a credible and outstanding production specialist. And before we completed the plan, we had at least 2 sessions with each staff, with all the staff, so that they could understand that what their requirements are when a subject comes up, so that we can disseminate the information using every medium available to us to our residents. So, and that's the reason why I sent you all the communications plan, so you could take a look at it. We briefed the previous council on that plan in September of 17. So, look at their objectives. The Communication Division began producing regular news features for the government channel, and the video reports and promotional videos of upcoming events are being produced monthly, and Sonia's really busy and doing a great job. Work with the Information Tech Department to redesign the website. This objective was completed in the fall, was postponed until the fall of 2020, and so we're working on that. C, to explore ways to expand training and video productions, opportunities for public access. A new editing space for public access producers will be available at the studio in the spring of 2020. It's slowed a little bit by COVID, but we're still planning to get that one done. D was to increase the alert Bowie for events and internal communications. Increase the use of it, and because when we were doing the listening sessions, we signed up a lot of people. So that was very productive. And so training's underway, and this feature will be activated in the spring. I think we can get that done in spite of COVID. Looking at the workload indicators, there aren't any major changes, and our objectives for fiscal year 2021 are to expand the messaging across all communication channels to educate people about Bowie services and programs, explore new opportunities for residents to engage with the government, continue to expand on how videos are integrated into our outreach efforts, and work with a consultant to develop a unifying, unique brand for the city. That, just for the record, that the use of a contractor to do that could be rather expensive. It could be as much as $90,000 is what we estimate. And so I wanted to make sure that's going for a unique brand is something that you all want to do. We think it was based on previous conversations, so there it is. Under full-time employees, there's 5.2 employees. I believe that this department is in need of an additional person, and most likely in next fiscal year, we'll be making that recommendation. Salaries in 411,100, fringe benefits 126,700, and you can see here down at professional service, we pay $95,000 for consulting services for digital HD grade upgrade in chambers, and if you look at on page 64, there's $196,000 that are expended there, and I'll let Una, you can explain all that for me, please.
Good evening, everyone. The 196,000 is basically divided into 4 major projects. And let me just start by saying that anything that we spend on that line item is eligible for reimbursement through the PIC funds that we receive from the cable franchise. So the 4 items are cameras, 2 cameras, and 2 camera control units. What we found, we were buying things piecemeal, and there was an incompatibility problem because the technology changes so quickly. We have camera control units that are over 20 years now, and it's time to replace them. If we don't buy new cameras at the same time, it's going to be out of sync. So it's a big expenditure. That's 88 of the 196,000 for that. Another is the network storage for the studio. This would allow for high-speed access to the video files, and it actually does a lot of formatting of the files in real time that our studio staff would use with the BCMC producers, and we would also use it for our own productions. It would increase in efficiency tremendously for the work that we do with that. These are really, really big files that you're talking about. And so that's 2, 3. And then the 4th thing is a production van for doing productions in the field. This is something we've needed for a while. I had to be convinced that it was worth spending the money on it, but we do over 30 different events that we cover out in the field. And if you watched, Mark, how much you needed to set up to do the listening sessions in the various remote locations at the community centers, there's a lot of equipment, a lot of expensive equipment that comes out of the studio for those events. And it's kind of being schlepped around. He had the first listening session, he had a lot of problems because things just become jostled with that much movement. So a van would protect our investment. It would also, besides saving wear and tear on the equipment, it would also save some wear and tear on the employees. Usually for the concerts, which are a lot of our events, Mark works out of a tiny little, very hot room at the back of the amphitheater, and the equipment overheats, and it causes some problems, other problems from there as well. So that would be a major expenditure of around 70,000, but it would be, a fairly one-time thing. We think we could use it for a while. The equipment would not be stored on there, but would be in cases that would be rolled on and off. So they would still be secure, but they would be built for that purpose, and there would be a whole lot less jostling. So those are the 4 things that make up that line item. I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions about communications?
Yeah, Mr. City Manager. Una, let me start by saying you guys have been doing a really good job of keeping us informed, really our citizens informed, especially in the middle of COVID-19. So I really do appreciate the work you guys are doing in that realm. Let me start with the workload and performance indicators. Something I'd like to see in the future focuses on stories pitched and landed, right? There's a lot of work that we're doing in our community that not just as council, but there's a lot of things that, you know, some of our members of our community are doing. For example, I'm not sure if you've heard of the priest who's been giving drive-through communion at the beginning of COVID-19, right?
And that got worldwide coverage.
And it got really good coverage. I would like to just see what stories are we pitching to press, both local, nationally, and which ones are actually landing and sticking as well. And if you do have that already, I'd just be interested at what stories out of Bowie are really working. My second question is with the objectives for the fiscal year 21. So we talk about a consultant, and it kind of also bleeds into this $95,000. And Al and Una, feel free to jump in here as well. But $95,000 for a consultant on branding when it comes to comms. I'm not really sure if I understand the strategic mission here, right? Shouldn't that be an internal thing our comms team is doing?
Well, first of all, it's 90. The 5,000 is for the HD consultant for council chambers. So, but you're right. A large part of that is for that. It is I talked with a lot of my peers around the country to do some research on this, and it's a whole effort. They estimate between 80 and 1,000 for most major branding efforts, because you're talking about not just designing a logo, but doing the research and doing stakeholders meetings and developing a style guide, how it's all going to be rolled out. So there's several different components. It's a lot of money. I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Could we do pieces of it? Yes. If we did all that is done by a consultant, it would pretty much consume us.
Yeah, and my hesitation with consultants coming in, and sorry if I'm getting too comsy for everybody out there, this may take some time, so I apologize in advance. But my hesitation with kind of, you know, having someone else go in the field is that, you know, although you and your comms team are out there and kind of visible, but you kind of lose that sense of connection when it's not you guys being able to be out there and out front. So I'd like to just reconsider that, and we can talk about this at a later date. But I do obviously know that the HD consultant is needed in council chambers. So we'd like to talk more about whether that's a new position for somebody or whatever we're doing, because that is a lot of money that we're spending on a consultant, and I think that can be done internally. The other question, and Al, to your point, thank you for the historical piece for new members. When it came to your comms plan, I did read it. It is a good plan, and let me say a good first step from where the council was before a lot of us got elected to where we are now. I do think we could take it a step further. And one of the things that it misses is digital. So we have here an advertising budget for $29,000. You know, when you guys are doing digital ads, and I'm assuming we're not running constant digital ads, because I don't see them.
We do them on Facebook primarily.
Okay.
And we don't do them constantly. We do them for major events, and we did them for each of the listening sessions.
Yeah. And as we saw with the listening sessions, a really good job with getting folks out there. I really do think in the digital space, we can do a better job of kind of creating that community, and whether that's increasing that advertising budget so that you guys have the ability to do that, right? We're talking Google ads, we're talking YouTube ads, but also it kind of creates this aesthetic for us as a community, for folks who also want to live here, right? You know, when people see Bowie and they see the stories and they see us advertising in kind of this geographical place, I think that advertising budget needs to increase. And if we're working on another comms plan in the future, I do think we need to include digital as a key component of it and trying to build a community there. My next question has to do with materials. So it looks like from last year there was a $21,000 cut. Yeah, we were 64,800, and now we're at 43,000. Same mission, especially covering the diversity committee. Can we explain what the changes?
Part of it was we spent a lot of money last year. Is relatively small amounts, but a good bit of money on changing microphones. There was a change in the FCC licensing for wireless microphones, and so we had more expenditures in that line item in FY20. And you know, it's sort of watching it more closely on where the money is going, and we also reclassified some things into other line items.
Right. Yeah. I could see that it seems like there was an equal split among other line items. Thank you for breaking down the capital outlay piece. Do you think, and I do agree that we need new video equipment in the city. However, when it comes to the van, talk to me about what other folks are doing. What I've noticed is that a lot of technology nowadays are portable. A lot of staffers in different fields when it comes to comms are kind of taking these really high-tech things. So for example, the HD backpack that you can just put on and go film something. What's the rationale behind the purchase of a van, right? I think you mentioned about $80,000 for the van. Was that the exact?
It was 70.
Yeah. So what's the
rationale is.
Well, you're talking, I mean, when you mentioned an HD camera on a backpack, what we're talking about are more complex kind of shoots. So you would have several cameras out there, not just one. So all the equipment that goes with them, and Mark uses a switcher that switches between the cameras, so he can control several cameras out in the field at the same time. So he can do control from one place, for example, the Bowie Fest main stage, and then the other stage over by the basketball courts, or at the parade, he's on one street, and then we can also be broadcasting from the bandstand. So they're not simple shoots for the most part, and that's why so much equipment is needed.
Okay.
And we're also going out live at many of these events, so that's extra equipment in order to do that as well.
I will, at this point, let my colleagues take time to answer some questions before I continue.
Hey, this is Roxy. I've got a couple. So for first question is around equipment rental. I see that we have annual bandwidth, and first I want to start off echoing everything that Mayor Pro Tem Boafo said about the great work and the plan. Al, really great job on that. It was pretty elaborate, and we can see that, you know, we've made significant progress from where we were before you came, and kind of what's been done since you walked in. So thanks for that. I want to start with the equipment rental for annual bandwidth video streaming. Why are we spending $14,000 on streaming services? Is that not included in whatever technology package that we have today? Why is that an extra expenditure?
That is basically for the Granicus service that broadcasts these meetings and the agenda management piece of it that goes along with them on the website, and the storage of all those meetings so that people can bring the meetings back up as videos on demand.
So that is not included with the current technology package that the city already has as a service? Or is there possible overlap? Has anyone looked to see if...
I think it's being equipment rentals a little misleading there. I mean, what you are talking about, we have an encoder that takes the signal from the council chamber. So yes, that is a piece of equipment, but a majority of that 14,000 is actually for the service that provides the live streaming.
Right, and what I'm asking is there not, has anyone looked to see if there is possible overlap in the IT package that we already have today? Like, we might already have that and we're paying for it again in another way, perhaps, that we may not know that we already have it. Has anyone looked into that?
I think I understand your question better now. And I can't think of what that would be, but it's certainly something that we could look into and get our heads together with IT and see where we could possibly come up with some savings or if there is overlap.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. I think if we could just take a look at what services we already have today, because if I'm familiar with just a high-level overview of contractual agreements from an IT perspective, most of the time those services are already included in a package that you own, and most people don't really know. So I'd just like to see if we could work with IT to take a look to see if we could possibly wipe out that expense, because we perhaps may have it in another area and we just don't know that we have it. So that would be super helpful. My second question is around it's kind of to Mayor Pro Tem Boafo's point about the consulting services. I completely agree that we definitely need to develop some sort of brand because it fosters a community feel. Like when you're talking about storytelling, and then when you're kind of, I guess you'd say, developing this community, it kind of increases this pride of I live in Bowie and I'm a Bowie resident and I'm proud because this is what my community is doing. I'm wondering if, from a perspective of, does it not make sense to perhaps maybe look at putting in another role or like hiring another FTE or divvying that up amongst the team that we already have? Because from a PR perspective, there are two things that I'm seeing missing. One is the analytics portions of it. Our advertising budget for $29,000, I think, is super low, because when we're talking about amplifying a message, I don't necessarily know that we have the capability to be able to do that from a yearly perspective with just $29,000. That seems a bit low to be able to amplify a message. So I'm wondering if part of that, if we could put our heads together and look at this professional services, $95,000, and this advertising of $29,000, and maybe kind of like hire somebody perhaps, or look at another avenue of how we can merge those together. Because I think what could help us, to Mayor Pro Tem Boafo's point, is being able to amplify our message, because like we're doing great things. I mean, your communications package that you put out around COVID, I get a lot of residents responding to me saying how great that is. But if the 68,000 people that live here, approximately, I'm guesstimating, that live here are not receiving those updates, then it's like your hard work is going unnoticed. So how can we work together to amplify that message, or perhaps look at divvying up into a role that can work on PR and getting these stories out there in a broader scale, or, advancing the message and the brand, and perhaps amplifying our voice as a city a little bit more, as opposed to what we're doing now. Because when I look at the Bowie Alert signups under workload and performance indicators, we have 7,200 signups. Now, if you compare that to maybe 70,000 residents, it's a bit low. So that tells me that a lot of people are not getting updates, because not even half or 3/4 of them are signed up for our alerts. So it's almost like, how do we solve for that problem? Does that make sense? That was pretty lengthy.
I'd like to, if I could, just address a couple of those points. I'd like to see more signups for Alert Bowie as well. We have gone up a good few hundred since this pandemic began. The same message that we put out via Alert Bowie is also going on next door, and that's going to about 12,000 households. Now, there may be some overlap there. And there's also posts going on social media referring people back to the website where the same update is being posted daily. The other point I wanted to make is that the $29,000 for advertising, I don't disagree, we could do more with a lot more money in advertising. A majority of that right now is actually for printing of the newsletter in the Bowie Blade each month. So we really only are spending about, I'm projecting to spend about $6,000 on what I consider true advertising in the coming year.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because when I think about just the way that the world is shifting into this whole notion and ideology around modern communications and the way that people like to receive their communications, the main gap that I see is, yeah, we have a communications analyst. That's great. And we have Sonia, and we have all the other members of the team that do great work, but we don't have anybody that is focused on I guess you would say, digital media, not necessarily social, but digital platforms, whether that's SEO ads or like hacking, that online footprint. I don't want to say hacking, that's the wrong word. Kind of getting into that online footprint for us to be able to amplify that message. I see that as the gap that we have that we are currently not filling. Because what ends up happening is you have individual council members that may post those updates on communication, and then we end up paying for the ads to amplify that message to make sure that that gets out to the community and it comes out of our individual pockets as opposed to it coming out of the city budget that it should be coming out of. So I think we should probably just take a deeper dive there and see if we can look at how we can increase our digital media footprint on advertising and then on the professional services piece with the branding and the storytelling, because I think that could be really good for us. If it's possible that maybe we, look at a part-time consultant, or we look at, just, I don't know, what other options that we might have to bring that down from 95, and then on the equipment rental, seeing if there's some overlap with IT there, if we already have that service and we're just be paying for it over again, because that's a pretty common scenario.
Well, let me chime in here. We can certainly take a look at this particular line item of 95,000. I think the question is, we're a bedroom community. Do we really need a branding here? But we could certainly delete this and add drop the 95 down to 30 and look for a part-time employee who has public affairs and communications to take on the branding mission. It may take a little longer, but we could always do that.
If I may, I'd like to chime in on this. I've had the opportunity to do a number of branding efforts elsewhere, and I can speak to a little bit about the preferability of using an outside vendor on this. Typically these sorts of things are once and dones. You don't want to be rebranding all the time. And frankly, when you have a staff, no matter where you are, that's not their area of expertise. They don't bring that to the table. It's not their full-time job. We got a lot of research. There are designers that work on this sort of thing. There are people who are responsible for conducting focus groups, doing outreach, doing interviews, even getting folks such as ourselves together in a room and trying to crystallize what we as an organization see ourselves as being, what we are now, what we want to be, mission, goals, vision, and all that sort of effort. And that's typically not the sort of thing that you would have the resources to do in-house, and certainly not for an organization of our size. And I rather doubt that we would be in a position to find somebody who would have the necessary skill sets to come in and do that, certainly not on a part-time basis. You'd have to go through all that effort, the research to do it, presumably do a little bit of testing on some of the options, choose a final branding strategy, motif, develop a strategy, and then we'd be in the position of actually having to do some execution materials, including some of the style guidelines and the like, and then make sure that style guidelines are applied to all of our existing communications channels. So this is no small task. We may decide whether or not we want to do it. We may be happy with the way we are, but I do think that if we want to do it properly, we would need to commit the money to doing that through a third-party vendor. That having been said, I think we ought to have that conversation if there's value in doing it.
Thanks, Councilman. Two other questions, and then I promise I will be finished. The first question was regarding, I know we did a mailer, and it came out of, obviously, FY20's budget. Did that fall under communications? And if so, where does that come out of exactly?
I'm not sure which mailer you're referring to. The most recent one we did was the listening session postcard. And that did come out of our budget under printing. Postage is centralized, so postage comes out of the general city manager's office budget, well, actually, business operations budget. And that line item, we have not done it, but it was for 4 postcards to be mailed out this year for the printing cost and the mailing cost, as I said, in the business operations budget. We've done 2 of them. The first one was what we did around Thanksgiving. It had a turkey on it, if you remember that, and it talked about the upcoming holiday events. The goal was to do a spring one and then one leading into summer. COVID-19 has hijacked that. I am thinking about if we do start to resume services that, if we have a critical mass services that we want to let everybody know have changed or that are back, that we would use that postcard mailing, at least one of them, to reach every single resident with that information.
Thanks, and that leads kind of a perfect segue into my next and last, I promise, final point. One of the things that I've heard, especially in the midst of COVID, outside of the things you said, obviously we have this massive Neighbors Helping Neighbors program. There's a lot of residents who just don't know that exists, right? And don't know and feel kind of at home and want to help folks. How is that cross communication happening, right? I know that community outreach kind of has a community service has a community outreach specialist. And maybe, Al, you can fit in here for the structural piece, right? It's not necessarily a budget question. And by all means, we can talk about it offline. But is there a strategic reason as to why that person doesn't sit in the comms department?
Well, the community outreach, you're asking why that position isn't in communications, is that right? Well, community outreach is a service provided specifically for various different aspects of the city, and to involve residents in the process that we have, from arts and entertainment to communicating with citizens, senior citizens, and other things, and education programs. I think also the Martin Luther King program might be involved in that also.
No,
That's part, well, right. So the communications division, however, their mission is specifically to get information to the residents, not so much to involve them in the activities. And so their job is to get the information, the command information we want them to have through all of the vehicles that are listed in our plan. And we see those as separate missions with some similarities, but not. And community services, which provides most of the services that are associated with that particular position, is in control of that person, and Sally, and it all fits with her more so than basic communications or straight communications.
Perfect, thank you. And again, thank you for all the work that you guys have done, especially in the midst of COVID, and keeping us as a council, but also keeping our citizens up to date on some of the things that are going on.
And thank you for doing your census little video minute.
No problem. And everyone else should do theirs as well.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to add is I want to see if possible, and this could be a conversation for the rest of council, but if it's possible to Al's point, and I think Una, I think you might have made this point, the potential that you may need somebody else in your office that could help that kind of community outreach, sign up, amplifying message, visual media strategy, kind of amplification that needs to happen. So I don't know if we want to look at possibly seeing that's something that we can add to help you out, but I do think that that's a really big need based off of kind of like the workload that we have in that area. So I think that's something that we should do. Before I see you smiling and laughing. So
well, I saw Una's reaction.
So maybe that's something that we want to talk about, because I think that's something that would really be able to help in our efforts here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agreed on that one.
And I want to chime in again. Adrian's not the only one with a number of go-backs. The question I have for you, actually, when it ties into the website redesign. Now, I know I don't want to talk about the systems or anything like that associated with it, but more at the higher level. Does the communications office own the responsibility of the content and the look and feel for the website?
Yes. We have a webmaster, Anthony Hogue, who does the back end kind of mechanics of it. In normal times, I approve all the content that is on the website. So each of the departments, using the content management system we have, they submit modifications to their pages or calendar entries or things like that, and then I review them and approve them. Right now, Tiffany Wright is helping me out with that from planning because we just can't keep up. In terms of the look and feel, the reason we deferred that was if we were to be doing a branding exercise, it didn't make sense to do a redesign of the website this year and then come up with a new brand next year and then change it again. So we work with our content management system, Civic Plus, to work on the design. But it's been about 3 or 4 years. It needs a refresh, definitely. Does that answer your question?
You sure did, and you also answered my next question, which was the issue of a redesign when you did not yet have the branding done. So that was a concern I had, and so thank you for addressing that already and your well thought out plans.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay then.
And I just want the last point that I had, sorry, I'm back again. The last thing I wanted to add was, I just want to thank you guys for all keeping in mind and thinking about this branding effort, thinking about the communications, because times are changing, home buyers are getting younger and younger. And so I appreciate that we are thinking about that and keeping that in mind in terms of, the way the city is branding itself and the way that the city is appealing to whether that's new home buyers or our current home buyers, to continue to make them feel a part of the community. I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Mark, could you turn up the audio feed for the people out in TV land? It's coming through low. All right. Well, the next division would be business operations. The business operations office handles critical and high-profile administrative management duties, including negotiating and monitoring city cable franchise agreements, telecommunication agreements, annexation agreements. The business operations office is also responsible for overseeing the city's utilities, as well as negotiating and monitoring procurement contracts with various organizations. The office manages various unique, sensitive issues directed by the city manager. What's meant there is, when I arrived here, this position was created in 2017. There were significant residents' constituent issues where there were conflicts between a resident, Washington Gas, BG&E, and the county, and the resident was in the middle and couldn't get anything done. So one of the missions of the business operations manager is to be able to have all the right phone numbers and all the right contacts with every agency that has impact on the residents in Bowie, so we can resolve issues with WSSC, Washington Gas, all those guys who impact our residents, and that's worked out really well. Because some of those issues, when you get a resident dealing with 2 or 3 bureaucracies, it can be awfully frustrating. Objectives and results from fiscal year 2020. The objective was to expand the INET upgrades and enhance the use of technology to improve performance, increase network connectivity, provide better customer service, and improve delivery to core services on an ongoing basis. The operations division continued to work with the INET partners, the INET core equipment hardware replacement. They are currently in the second year of a 3-year project with Juniper equipment already partially purchased and awaiting install by INET team according with the project schedule. There's a redundancy fiber and connectivity for the Iceplex project is on schedule. And we're working with CTC on the project, and the completion expected by the summer. That's an essential function, so it should be able to continue. Also, in July 2019, the city in partnership with the Prince George's County Department of Public Works extended redundancy fiber to city parks and ground facilities on Mitchellville Road. Before I get into the negotiation of franchise agreements, you should know that there is a Prince George's County cable consortium, and these are a collection of agencies, cities and the county, included in the county, where we negotiate with Comcast and Verizon as a block group, and which gives us more clout and more voice. So we are currently renegotiating the Comcast and Verizon cable franchise agreements. In December, the consortium met with Comcast to further the negotiations of the agreement. At this meeting, the consortium presented to Comcast with the proposed revisions in the terms. Verizon cable franchise renegotiation is proceeding. Comcast says we've been operating in limbo using the old agreement for several years as we negotiate, and it's been somewhat difficult to get Comcast to the table to negotiate. So that was really a nice step forward. With regard to Objective C and its results, I'll let Maddie explain that, and I'm sure she's out there jumping at the bit to get going. So Maddie, you take number C for me, please.
Good evening, everyone. I've got to switch a screen, but I will talk about that. Excuse me, sorry. So what we did was we were identifying smart energy measures. The first thing that I did was I identified a database that would help to consolidate this information into something that we could use the metrics to later do some other reports, but it's the Energy Start Portfolio Manager. And so right now I'm inputting data from various facilities, data in terms of the usage of energy, electricity, gas, and water. And hopefully I'll have that completed by the spring of 2020. The second thing we're looking at is LED lighting. And this, right now, we have it at the Senior Center and at the Church Road Park. And pending the COVID, Black Sox Park will be next. Okay?
All right.
I'm sorry?
Proceed.
Okay. After that, I apologize. I'm cut off. I'm sorry. Am I cut off?
No, you're just fine. Continue, please.
Hello? Oh, my goodness. Did it cut off?
You're good.
I'm sorry. It just seemed like my screen went totally blank. I apologize. And then the final thing that we're doing is I created, or I redeveloped a team that's called the Staff Sustainability Team. And basically what that team does is that it will educate, it will recommend different types of activities, or of decisions to be made. Oh my God, he's going blank again. I apologize. I think I'm...
You're still good. We can still hear you.
We can hear you. Just go ahead with what you're doing, please. Well, apparently we've lost Matt. What she was saying there is that, in speaking regarding the last two bullets under C, she's got a staff sustainability team which is currently working to increase the use of energy efficiency technologies such as LED within our systems. Also, the SST, which is the acronym for that team, they were meeting in January to review energy efficiency policies and to make recommendations for a green fleet policy and EV infrastructure as recommended by the City Council. If you'll go to page 66, D was to increase energy expenses of the city by the end of FY 2020 by overseeing the installation of solar farm on city-owned NZN properties. The council, you all approved the renegotiated terms and of the solar array that's going to be out at the NZN property, and we're hoping to have a groundbreaking here any time now. So we're, the groundbreaking has been moved to the fall of this year. So, and that was a hard-fought negotiation that our city attorney was very instrumental in getting done. Looking at the residents' complaints, the workload and performance indicators, the statistics are really good. We continue to use this operation, the business operation, and Maddie and her team to solve resident conflicts and problems they have with utilities and other agencies in the area, and that's been very helpful. The objectives for fiscal year 2021 are in coordination with the IT department and the INET coordinating committee, which is made up of the same persons who are in that consortium I mentioned earlier. The business operation continues to process and upgrade and expand the INET infrastructure, which is is fiber. In FY 2020, they plan to enhance the use of technology to improve performance, increase network connectivity, and provide better customer service. They're going to be finalizing the INET core equipment hardware replacement by December, completing the redundant fiber project of the city by spring of next year, and completing the connectivity extension to the ICEPlex by next spring. Number 2 there, Comcast, and continue the negotiation with that particular project as a part of the consortium, of course, assuming that we can keep Comcast at the negotiating tables. We're going to use smart energy to reduce the consumption of energy in the city facilities, and we're going to use smart energy data to help do that. And we'll be working in collaboration with the Green Team, and working with community services to identify energy efficiencies related to metrics required in analyzing our Energy Star portfolio, because community services, of course, has our facilities engineers, which is where we hope to help us save money. And working with the staff sustainability team to continue to review and recommend and educate sustainable practices for our green fleet policies and green purchasing. There are 4 people in this division. The costs are $261,000 in salaries and wages, $126,700 in fringe benefits. We spend $35,000 on charter amendments, special meeting hearings, elections, special voting registration drives, and city ordinances. And we spend $62,600 on materials, supplies, and equipment. And this is for the entire city organization. Stationery, office, computer supplies, copy machine management, which is really a big deal and important to us. And of course, $100,000 for postage that you see right there. Well, that's for the entire city too. Also, we are looking at the capital outlay, and it's include machinery and equipment, includes the INET related upgrades, network communications, connectivity with ICE Arena, and design engineering for CCTV systems, and CCTV EOC equipment. And funding for all these items are through grants from the city's 2 cable providers. So, any questions regarding business operations? Maddie, did you make it back on? No, I guess not.
Yes, hello, I apologize. My computer just completely decided not to work.
Well, I'm glad you're back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
I have a couple comments / question. The first one is I'm glad to see the staff sustainability team. It's nice to see that there is a decided interest within the workforce to advance these efforts. So thank you for your part in that, and thanks to others involved. Quick question for you, Maddie, on the assessments and using of additional energy things efforts. BG&E has some programs that they use for sending somebody out to survey buildings and the like. Have we taken advantage of that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we have, currently we are working with one of the, with a representative from BG&E who is going out to our different facilities. And right now they're doing an audit on our lighting to see if we, meet the requirements for their free LED lights. So one of the ones that met the requirements was Church Road, and all of the lights in the parking lot have been replaced with LED lights. They went out to Black Sox Park. They also qualified, and they are also having their LED lights replaced, but because of COVID, that has been put on hold. So we are working with them to go to different facilities that meet the requirements, and hopefully we can get those LED lighting.
That's awesome. That's really good news. We're getting it courtesy of our friends at BG&E, so thank you. Another follow-up, I guess more of a general comment. I want to thank you for your efforts with helping resolve a number of constituent issues, not the least of which I think some of the most meaningful for folks are the gas leaks. I know that we had a constituent that had a persistent gas leak and wasn't getting the attention it deserved, and people were quite concerned about obviously not just quality of life, but safety and whatnot. Bully, for you, thank you for resolving that, jolting, embarrassing, and encouraging them to do the proper thing. So,
You're welcome.
Okay then, any other questions about business operations and directed at me or Ms. Bizzurto? If not, we'll proceed to the division you've all been waiting for, the city clerk's division. The city clerk's office provides support services to and assistance to the city council and the city manager's office. This office, in conjunction with the Board of Elections, is responsible for and makes arrangements to conduct, administrate, and preparation and operation of city elections, as well as the updated maintenance of voter registration rolls. Additionally, the office maintains update city codes, makes arrangements for, and preparation for transcribing minutes, preparation for council meetings, including setting up the council agenda, taking notes, and transcribing minutes. The city clerk maintains official records and documents of the city, answers inquiries from outside agencies, citizens, government bodies, and on behalf of the city. This office arranges interviews for the council applications for city committees and rosters. The city clerk provides direct support to the city council for a myriad of missions, and administrative and otherwise. During 2020, the objectives and results are schedule and arrange quarterly work sessions with the council stemming from their requests during the council retreat in 2018. The first work sessions was held in December 17, 2019. Council met with the city's plan director and economic development director. Second work session was held on March 11, where the council met with the Prince George's County School Board members. The update the rules and regulations of committees and present to the council for adoption by September 30, 2019. This objective was delayed to allow the new elected officials to make recommended changes, and we're still working on that one, I understand. The council reviewed Resolution R-1601 and adopted update rules in March. So we're, number C, update procedures for Board of Appeals and present to the council for adoption by January 31st, 2020. The objective was delayed to allow newly elected council members to review and make any recommended changes. The council is reviewing the current procedures that were last updated on March the 5th, 81. D, arrange orientation sessions for the council after November 5, 2019, and an orientation was conducted on the 23rd of November, 2019. Update the rules and procedures for the city council and present to the council for adoption by December 2019. This also was delayed to allow newly elected officials to make any recommended changes. Council is reviewing the current procedures and the last update was in 2008. Proceeding to page 70, we look at the workload indicators. They are very similar, except for the expenditures per capita goes up over $1. The objective for 2021 are to work with the planning department staff in reviewing and balancing the population of the city 4 districts by January 2021, and using census data, I assume. Also work with IT department to begin using the Agenda Center software for Civic Plus for creation of agenda packets all electronically. The significant changes is 1 full-time employee, a grade 109, at a cost of $56,163 in salary to, it's for the need that was identified last year, and we were able to get it in this year so that we can do a better job of supporting the council in the various manners that's part of our mission. So that means the clerk office goes from 1 person in 2020 to 2 in 2021. Salaries 140, benefits 41, and now the large expense will be $10,000 for training associated with training clerk and certifications of the city clerk. Any questions about the city clerk's budget? If there aren't any, then we'll proceed to the Economic Development Division on page 72.
I've got a question. With the city clerk's office, so I see that you have under FY21, there's been an administrative assistant role that's been brought up for a person full-time equivalent.
Yes.
So is that's the new role that's been assigned to assigned to support the city council?
Well, yes, the position is a full-time employee, administrative assistant, grade 109, which will, that person will work for the city clerk and help her in her efforts to support the city council.
Okay, so that's really great. Thank you for putting that in there. The only thing that I would like to kind of, hear the thoughts of my council member, and especially you as well, Al, is based off of the need of city council, like how do you envision that role going? Like what role will they play in working with the city council? How will they support the city council? Because if I look at the reporting structure, it looks like that person would be reporting directly to AWILDA as opposed to reporting to the city council. So I'm just trying to understand with that vision, how do you envision them being able to support the city council with a full capacity, and how have you determined that one person will meet the demands and the workloads of 8 individuals?
Well, as far as who the person works for, the chart is pretty clear in that respect. There are 2 people that work for the city council. That's the city attorney and me, and all other employees are subordinate to the city manager. And what we ascertained last year, maybe a year before that, is that the workload of the city clerk, which includes many things, and a majority of which are in general support to the council. For example, there was an assignment today given to the council to administratively take the letterheads, put documents into it, and it was a complex 2 or 3 hour event. At current, we only have 1 person who can do that. And when you look at other cities, even College Park 20 years ago had a clerk and an assistant to help manage the regulatory requirements of the clerk's office, which are many, maintaining all our records and providing support to the council. So that there would be 1 additional qualified, high-performing professional to help provide the direct support to you all that you need, either on a scheduled basis or an unscheduled basis. And what we intend to do, what I'm trying to do with everybody in the city, is make sure that every employee has a work plan. Now, Mr. Wolfley understands this because he's a federal employee, and they do that really well. And that means everybody has 4 to 5 elements assigned to them. I learned this at the Department of Education. And these are critical assignments and critical elements that contribute mightily to the greater goal of the organization. And therefore, we intend to take this person, whoever that person is, and give them, assign them a work plan that specifically supports the clerk's overall mission to support you all. For example, maybe that person will be the person who handles the files and manages the file and relieves the will of that, so she can be free to provide direct support to you all as she possibly can within the limits of the charter.
Yeah, I guess I think that might need to be a deeper conversation that we might need to have amongst the entire council as well, because just from my observation, and if I'm just speaking from the perspective of District 4, I know the amount of requests and the amount of incoming emails and the amount of constituent engagement that needs to go on to make us all successful as council members who are a very active bunch and that are looking to, really elevate things and be there for our constituents as best as we possibly can. It might be worth it to look and see if it's worth bringing on another person as well, making that 2 people to be able to support 8 individuals. If that second person needs to be part-time or whatever that looks like, or how we address that, I think we need to probably take a deeper look there, because I think the workload is, sorry, there's a severe echo, but I think the workload is a lot increased from what the normal demand is. And I know just based off of my emails, I get a lot of residents emails, and I think a lot of residents aren't necessarily privy to the fact that the council is part-time. Sometimes I don't get a chance to respond as quickly as I may want to be able to help them. And sometimes it's just simple questions like, hey, I need my trash picked up at a certain amount of time, or can you update me on the processes and the procedures, or this is what I need help with. And that turnaround is not as quick as I would like to see it be, because of the simple fact that we are part-time and we do have full-time jobs. So I think that might be worth a deeper conversation between the rest of the council to see if that's kind of the direction and how we want to go, or if there's a possibility to look at bringing on 2 people as opposed to just 1, to be able to really expedite these processes and make sure that we're really being there for the constituents in the capacity in which we would like to.
Okay then. Are there any other questions or comments or suggestions about the city clerk's budget? If there are,
I think from those comments, if you don't mind, I apologize if I talk over anyone. I guess we need to look to make sure that we do have that discussion and talk about whether or not we want to have 2 bodies to support the entire council, and have a way that we can work through that process. Okay?
And I have one follow-up question. Al, has there ever been a scenario where any administrative staff has reported to the mayor in any way or supported the mayor? I'm just curious, because from what I've heard historically, that might have happened in the past, and I don't know if the charter was changed somewhere along the way, but has that ever happened historically?
there's no evidence to support that at all here. The way it works in this council management form of government and many others, the city council has to work out their interaction with their constituents, and then the clerk and his or her staff provide administrative support in preparing ordinances, drafting memos, organizing meetings, running the elections, and providing limited support to the council, but in the area of having a special assistant for one person or another, I've never been in my 4 cities, I've never seen that as the case in a council manager form of government. But there is always a clerk and assistant clerks to help out. But what that role is of the clerk, in that respect, it has to be decided by the city council what you all want that person to be able to do for you. And right now, we're managing it in the way it's been done in the past, in my experiences, And so what I'm trying to do is add somebody to this thing, to the clerk's office, so that she isn't overwhelmed by requests and workloads. And then we have a mission failure. So the answer is no.
Yeah, and I can speak from past experience, and of course, knowing a lot of the former councilmen and women in the past that have served, this would be something new and different. And I think, to your point, Roxy, it would require some additional thought for us collectively if we wanted to do anything along these lines.
Okay then, if there aren't any questions, Mr. Mayor, I'll move forward, and we'll bring up John Henry and talk about economic development. Before we start this, I want to pass on some information, financial information that I have a fiduciary responsibility to talk to you about, and it involves finance and economic development. But with the COVID-19 and the fact that so many people are unemployed right now, we could expect a reduction in the income tax that we get from the state of Maryland. We are projecting $12 million in income tax revenues from the state of Maryland, and that's significant because we got a $60 million budget. So I want to make sure you all understand that we don't know what the effect will be. Hopefully there won't be any, but it's the hard numbers are hard to overlook. That if the state of Maryland's revenue from income taxes has been reduced 30–40%, they may be hard pressed to pass on the entire $12 million to us. And so as stewards of the budget, which we all are, we just have to keep that in mind when we look at our revenues and expenditures, especially for the next 2.5 months. Now, with this budget, there's a projected $10 million revenue shortfall as it stands because of the past and no increases and all that. But that's a reality as you look at the budget. So we're planning to take up to $10 million from the fund balance that we currently have. Also, we're gonna take the COVID-19 personnel costs are gonna be, if Governor Hogan stops the stay-at-home mandate in around the end of May, that will have cost us $2 million in additional personnel costs. Now, also there is a potential for highway user fees. We don't know what's going to happen with the highway user fees. I think we're planning to get almost $3 million in highway user fees. However, in reality, understanding how, that comes from the state, and they are expending all their funding with many things, including the Guard and all those guys who are not federalized, they're being paid by the state. We may not get the highway user fees. I'm hoping for it, or there may not be any money in the pot for that, and some of our bond issues that we're going to come from the state. So I just want to make sure we all understand that, and I'm not being I don't want to be a pessimist, but I want to be a realist. If this stay-at-home, nobody goes to work, nobody earns a salary, continues, there's going to be a specific damage to the state budget, which will have an impact on us in the future. So we could be a couple $1 million short on income taxes, on income tax funding, and we may not get the highway user fees. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that as we go forward. But we don't know yet. We're working, we're calling, we're trying to find out, but we don't know because there's so much uncertainty associated with this pandemic and what it's doing to the economy in the state of Maryland. And also there's a problem with federal funds because there are limits on what the state of Maryland can use their funding for. And I understand they cannot currently supplement their budgets with the federal money. So It's a bit of a quagmire. It'll be sorted out. Now, we intend to aggressively, using our grant people and using our emergency management guys, go after every dime that's available in June and July, assuming this stay-at-home quarantine's over by then, to get the money back from whoever's got it, either the federal government or the state. But there are no guarantees that there'll be any money to go after, but we're certainly going to do it. All right. The mission of the Economic Development Office is to increase the employment and non-residential tax base of the city through business retention, expansion, and attraction, tourism, promotion, community development, redevelopment, revitalization, and other business technical assistance. We have John Henry King, who is, might have to talk loud to him because he used to be in the artillery. You know, they can't hear very good. But he is almost a one-man operation, but he has John Henry and his intern. John Henry, I'd like for you to go through your objectives and results for the council.
Good evening. The first objective was to continue to diversify and expand Bowie's economic base. I do that by supporting business attraction and retention. Some of the highlights in that, we've got an ongoing Locate in Bowie advertising campaign. It's targeted to the commercial brokerage community. Different publications reach the office, flex brokerage community, and the retail brokerage community. The idea behind this is all of the tenants that are likely to come to Bowie will be represented by a commercial real estate expert of some sort. So we want them to think Bowie, so as they are advising their clients in their location, that Bowie becomes one of their selections. Also within that effort, we have an ongoing relationship with the city's largest employer, which is Inovalon. Past council approved an incentive package to retain that business here and for them to retain no fewer than 500 employees here. For that, each year, if they are here and with an employment here of 500 or more employees, they receive a payment of $100,000. I monitor and verify that each year, and in conjunction with the finance office, the city issues that payment. The next objective is to continue efforts for shopping center revitalization, and that's the retail tenant and attraction and retention. I do that by keeping in touch with the center owners and the center managers. We also have the advertising program that supports their leasing efforts to bring tenants here. We do an annual marketing event with the International Council of Shopping Centers. We've been very fortunate in that for the past almost 10 years now, that annual event has occurred at the Gaylord Hotel here in Prince George's County. Prior to that, it was held in Washington, D.C. We have an incentive related to retail, and in order to accomplish the redevelopment of the Bowie Marketplace Shopping Center, the city entered into an agreement that provided an incentive payment to the developer to offset the low cost of rent the grocery anchor wanted. That is an incentive payment of $50,000 per year, and again, I monitor the performance. The performance criteria on that are basically, is the grocer still there and operating? That payment has one more year to run. The third one is one that I think many of you have expressed a great interest in, which is our continued support to growth of small business through the business assistance programs we provide. The centerpiece of our business assistance efforts rests with the Bowie Business Innovation Center, our incubator. Parenthetically, I'll note that the executive director of the Bowie BIC will be here on June 2nd, the first meeting in June, to brief you, as she does each year. We also provide support to 3 of the state's premier small business assistance programs: the Maryland Procurement Technical Assistance Program, which is actually a creation of the Defense Logistics Agency, operated via the University of Maryland, provides technical assistance to businesses that are now or want to be contracting with the federal government. It started as an initiative to increase the number of small and minority business contractors with the Defense Department, but has since expanded to assist small businesses of any ilk with improving their ability to participate in government contracts. We also have ongoing small business counseling available from the Small Business Development Center, again, an operation through the University of Maryland, the Capital Region. Both the procurement and the small business assistance programs include a counselor who spends 1 day a week here at Bowie City Hall. Of course, during this COVID crisis, there have been no physical appointments. They are continuing to provide support virtually. And the final, last but not least, piece of that is the Maryland Women's Business Center, which is a program specifically created to ensure that women-owned businesses receive the benefit of all of these assistance programs. They are headquartered in Montgomery County, but we have an outpost that is located at the Bowie Business Innovation Center at Bowie State University, and at least once a month they are providing a program here at City Hall. Also within that objective this year, as we have since 2002, the city operates a revolving loan fund, and when I say we operate it, we have provided funding to FSC First, which is a county-backed community development corporation small business lender that takes currently the $350,000 that council has appropriated over the years and lends that out. We have 4 business loans active right now with a balance on them of a shade under $210,000. And that means we have about $140,000 in that fund that is available to loan to small businesses to lever their ability to get the bigger loans. The final objective is one that you added for me for this fiscal year, and that's to provide some technical assistance to the group that's trying to establish an arts and entertainment district in Old Town Bowie. With me as the staff lead and several of my colleagues from community services, we've been working to give them technical assistance and help them in their efforts. They are one of the better formed community-based efforts I've seen in my entire economic development career. They have analyzed the situation they're in, they have adjusted their plans accordingly, and they are taking appropriate steps to create and achieve a vision for Old Town Bowie in the arts and entertainment area. That's what's happened this year.
Thank you, John Henry. As you look at the workload indicators, the square feet of real estate, retail space vacant in the thousands, that's gone up 150 points. Could you explain that, John Henry? On the square feet of retail vacant?
That's more a database issue. We get data from the largest commercial real estate data vendor in the United States. That's a company called CoStar. It's based here in the region. Their data has some accuracy issues at times. So the predominant increase in that is their better capturing of what is actually vacant here in the city. That data accuracy is complicated in that shopping center owners are quick to report leases made and space filled. They're not quite as quick to report spaces left vacant. I think in light of the business issues that have been particularly hard-hitting in retail during the COVID-19 pandemic, we may well see that retail vacancy number increase in the coming year rather than decrease.
Thank you, John Henry. If we look to page 74 and we look at the objectives for 2021, all 5 of them are continuations of the current objectives, the 2020 objectives that he just briefed you on. There are no significant budget changes in this division. It's John Henry and an intern, 1.4 FTEs. We have $154,000 in salaries for those two people and $52,000 in fringe benefits. We have $82,000 in advertising and local regional publications to support business attraction, expansion, and retention. There's $248,000 in professional services for hosting brokers or prospect events, advertising, graphic design. Also includes city contribution to the Bowie Business Innovation Center, Bowie BIC, the Small Business Development Center, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, the Maryland Women's Business Center, and service fees for maintenance and operation of the city's revolving loan program. And of course, the other charge listed at the bottom of page 75 is the money for the revolving loan fund. Any questions or suggestions or comments for the economic development?
Yes, I have a question, Mr. City Manager.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, John Henry King, for coming out this evening, as always. I do have a question. If you could explain to those who may not be aware, including the listening public and the City Council, how the relationship works with our local Bowie businesses, and be it a retail establishment or any sort of firm, and how the City of Bowie collects, if the City of Bowie collects revenue or taxes from that business.
I think I'll start the answer by asking my colleague, Mr. Matthews, to explain a little bit the taxes collected from businesses.
Correct. Thank you.
Good evening again. The business-related income first begins with the largest portion of that, and that's the real property tax. The second portion of that is the personal property tax for furnitures and fixtures that these businesses own. The next portion would be business taxes, and in that category we would have hotel and motel, we would have admissions and amusements, we would have traders and peddlers license, we would have financial corporation tax. Also, there are some rental fees that we collect from these businesses who occupy some city facilities as well. Another portion of that is building permits and storm drain and paving permits. And also, I included housing and property inspections. Some of the rental properties are owned by businesses as well as individuals, but I thought it was important to mention that. If we look at the revenue that we received thus far as of today, that's about $7.8 million in revenue from those categories. This time last year, it was about $7.7 million.
Okay, and again, and you said we're currently on date for 7.8
million as of today.
Okay, now, question. I know this answer, but I just want it for our listening public and for those on the council who may not know. Does the City of Bowie collect any sales tax from any of its retailers?
Councilman, no. City sales tax is a revenue source for the state of Maryland only.
Okay. And does the City of Bowie collect any, other than the $7.8 million, do we receive any other financial benefit, meaning the city, from these firms being here? The city, the entity itself, receive any additional dollars directly from these businesses?
These are the major categories that I laid out. These are the only sources of revenue that those businesses provide the city.
Okay.
Of course, they generate other businesses and other revenue within that component piece that actually affect other businesses in and around the city. But this is the main portion of revenue that we collect directly.
The 7.8 million.
Right.
And of our overall benefits that the City of Bowie receive, both our residential tax base and this 7.8 million, what percentage of this 7.8 million are we talking that this is?
It represents about 14% of the general fund revenue.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Matthews. I do have another question for Mr. King, John Henry King. Could you explain to me and the public at home, as well as council who may not understand, the role and responsibilities of the EDC, the Economic Development Committee, for the city of Bowie?
Certainly. First thing, you explained it. EDC stands for Economic Development Committee. The term EDC is used to mean various different things in various jurisdictions, but it's generally some entity that is created to deal with economic development, which is also a phrase that is defined differently in different places. The City of Bowie Economic Development Committee was created in its current incarnation in 2002. It was created by Council Resolution 6-02. And within that resolution, there were 8 or 10 specific functions set out. The principal among those was it's created to advise the city council on all aspects of the city's economic development. It is a body that could have, if it's fully populated, 21 members. It currently has 10 members, and they stand ready to provide advice to the city. The members range from former elected official, residents who simply live in a district and have an abiding interest in the health of the community, to business owners and business advisors, bankers, real estate investors, and real estate leasing people. So it's a very diverse perspective.
Thank you, Mr. King. Thank you very much. I do want to let the council know, and our listening public, let them be aware that the EDC is working with John Henry King to come up with the plan to develop, to develop a plan to address the economic fallout from many of our retail and local businesses that are suffering during this time period. That plan that the EDC will work to develop will be presented to council. Do note that I am the council liaison for the EDC, so I will be working with the EDC to develop that plan. But I will note that our plan will not have any component in it to where we will be taking dollars from the reserve fund to fund. That plan will not. But if the council decides to do something on its own outside of what our recommendation and my recommendation to the council would be, then by all means you go for that. But it's not my nor the will of the desire to take monies from our fund balance to support a business bailout. I think the city manager just stated that this COVID pandemic is going to cost us quite a bit financially, and I think that we need to focus in on the operation of the city. Charity begins at home first. Thank you.
Mr. King, how are you this evening?
I'm well,
Thank you
sir.
for being here. I have a couple of quick questions for you. First and foremost, if you could, by no means are you implying that developing a strong business base within the city is not beneficial to the city, are you?
I've never said that.
No, and that's what I'm saying.
No,
We do need to.
having a strong business base is very beneficial to us. It was our reason for being. You go back to when Bowie was founded, it was founded for a business purpose involving the railroad. As it developed in its Levitt incarnation in the latter part of the 20th century, Levitt recognized that if people were going to live here, they needed certain kinds of businesses to provide things they wanted. And that idea permeates all that we do, is we provide the businesses here and support them because of the benefit they bring to our community. That benefit can certainly change over the decades, and it can change as the nature of business evolves, but it's always here to be a support component to what we as the city are hoping to do. So definitely, we are in favor of business. And even in the worst political rhetoric.
See that? I apologize, Mr. King. Please go ahead. I didn't mean to.
No, I've never heard anybody say we were against business. I think if folks listen carefully to anything that has been said, no one is against business. And I would say that about all 7 of you. I have not heard anyone utter an anti-business saying. Period.
Exactly, which justifies why we have the budget we do, working with the Bowie BIC and other things. And I just wanted to make sure that nobody misunderstood the well-meaning words that our councilman said, or what we're trying to do as a council, and trying to make sure that we strengthen and encourage business within the city. I think one of the things we do need to look at is making sure that we do assist those businesses that have been hard hit by the pandemic, because we do need to just look at what your plan is and how we assist them. One of the things we need to do, if nothing else, make sure that you apply good leadership and direction to them for state, federal, and local funds that may be available out there. So thank you so much for everything you're doing, and we really look forward to your ideas and with the EDC of how we move forward to support continued growth of businesses here in Bowie.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, let me, if I may.
Roxy, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, feel free, go ahead.
I wanted to tell, COVID is on everyone's mind. Last Monday night, council assigned a task to find a solution for the certain business issues that have been mentioned. This coming Monday at your meeting, the chairman of the EDC, Mr. Sherman Ragland, will be speaking to you on the topic and how he is organizing the EDC to address your concerns.
And if I may just add one point to John Henry, just to follow up on that, and Mr. Mayor, John Henry, appreciate all the work that you're doing there, especially for this area. It's really important to a lot of us, and really, part of the reason why a lot of us ran for office. So really thank you for a lot of the work that you're doing. I'm going to just comment on that really quickly, because since the last meeting, I was the person who brought up directing the EDC to support our businesses and make sure that we have a sound plan in place to just make sure that we're providing that fairness across the board to all businesses here in Bowie and supporting them during this unfortunate and gruesome time. So I just want to make sure that you understand and that you're aware that we are giving you, the capacity to take, your ideas and your suggestions in whichever direction, and we're taking the lead for you to understand what you're recommending and what you think might be the best possible option, because you have that expertise. And so we're here to learn from you and work with you. And then as the leaders who are representing the community, make sure that we're making the best appropriate decisions together that will help the community and affect the community in the most positive light, and especially not leaving our small businesses and our business owners here in the city of Bowie behind. So I just want to make sure that you understand and that you're aware that you do have that full capacity to, kind of think of things in your own lens, because you have that experience, that is your background, that's your bread and butter, and that we're not limiting your capabilities there or suggesting that you move in one direction or you move in the other. Basically, our overall objective is, and I speak, on behalf of myself, District 4, and, most of the members of the council, since I did bring this up the last meeting, we just want to make sure that as businesses are coming to the city of Bowie requesting assistance, that we are working with our state programs, our federal programs, and offering assistance here on the city level to make sure that our business community continues to thrive, since, like you mentioned, that was kind of the premise that Bowie was founded on. So I just want to make sure that I clarify that, and that's out in the open for all of our residents that are watching, and for every member of the council to just basically understand where we're coming from and what the whole entire ideology was behind that. A follow-up question for you. Under the professional services part, I see that there's a $248,000 allocated to that area. Could you just help me understand a little bit more of those programs that we are working with? I see the Maryland Women's Business Center, the Technical Assistance Center. Like, what? I don't want to sound too business, but what's the ROI there? Like, how are we helping? Like, how is this money and this funding helping these people scale? And what is that contributing back to the city? Can you help us understand that a little bit? Because I just see that big dollar amount. So I just want to get a better understanding there. And then I'll follow up with the rest of my questions.
As with many things accounting-wise, the label doesn't always reflect everything that's in the container. The largest component of the professional services line is the more than $100,000 in funding we will provide directly to the Bowie Business Innovation Center through several grant payments during the course of the next fiscal year. That helps them to provide the services in counseling and value add that the incubator does provide and has provided since this council initiated it. All of the details of how that money is spent can be addressed by Ms. Smith's presentation to you in June, where she can lay out what the programs are, what the clients are, what the benefits those clients have achieved. The next component in there is the ongoing, is a $50,000 request to increase the revolving loan fund so that we have more money available to put on the street to support businesses in Bowie who need to borrow for operating or growth purposes. The third big chunk is the aggregate of the annual grant we make to each of those three small business assistance providers I mentioned earlier, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, the Small Business Development Center, and the Maryland Women's Business Center. Together we give them about $25,000 all total that's split for the year. The rest of that professional services goes to a variety of other organizational and event and support related services, things like the graphics vendor I use to create and update my advertising, certain sponsorship that increases our connection to the development and brokerage community, things of that sort. So that's what's contained within that number of professional services.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Two things really quickly. One, I'd like to see Bowie State University included in this. I don't see them anywhere, and as we all know, that Bowie State University is developing, their own kind of business innovation center. That is the expansion plan that they are looking at in terms of the property that they already have that they are working on. So I'd like to see how we're working with that, because that is a university that's right in our backyard and it's here. So I'd like to see a better alignment in terms of the way that we support them, and that's missing from these professional services, because I see we have the Small Business Development Center, we have the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, but we don't have the university that's right in our backyard. So I'd like to see us kind of figure out how we can work them in there and support their business community, especially the young kids that do live in this neighborhood and in the Bowie area that are in those programs, that are becoming business owners in the city of Bowie, hoping that they stay in the city of Bowie. I'd like to see how we can work with them to flesh that out a little bit more. So that's something that I'd like to see there. On to the advertising side for $82,000. So just a question for you there. Could you just walk us through or share a little bit more about your strategy
strategy there? Because I know that there's $82,000 towards advertising, but when I look at, the surrounding areas, whether that's Collington Plaza or I look at the Bowie Town Center, I don't necessarily know that, it's reflective of our advertising efforts. So I'd just like to understand a little bit more of the strategic plan to, I guess you would say the word is innovate those areas with our advertising plan. Like, what does that look like for you? Can you help us understand a little bit more?
We don't spend our money directly promoting any single piece of real estate in the commercial sector in the city. We spend it promoting sectors of real estate, the office sector and the retail sector, to the commercial brokerage community that represents the businesses who would locate in those vacant spaces, the people who might invest in purchasing a center and thereby spend new money to revitalize it, and to the development community that might be looking for an opportunity to invest and improve a property, thereby increasing its attractiveness. So very few of those target folks are actually in the city. So most people in the city will never see the advertising that is the direct purchase from those dollars. They will ultimately see the benefit by a new business opening in a location or an additional employer renting an office or a flex space and offering jobs to the community. So does that help clarify a little bit more how that $82,000?
So I understand that. I guess what I'm looking for is, so I'm not necessarily looking to flip through the Washington Post and see the direct advertisement myself because I'm not a retailer, but what I am looking to understand is what is the data? So from a perspective of however you're spending that $82,000 from last year to this year, how have you seen, what increase have you seen in businesses that have come to this area off of efforts because of that? Like, what does that, how many people have been hired off of those efforts? Like, what does that data look like in terms of the trajectory and the trends? How have they changed? And that's what I'm looking to understand if that $82,000 number is justifiable, if it's too high, if it's too low, and basically what we need to do there to continue these revitalization efforts. So do you have that type of data that you can share with us in terms of the trends, how that has changed from last year to this year? Perhaps maybe that's new businesses that have come to the area that you can highlight for us to understand a little better?
You're asking for advertising metrics. These are not direct response ads. While they all run with my contact information, they're intended to direct the response to the individual property owner or the leasing representative. There's very little that I can do if, for example, Mr. Wolfley calls and says, Mr. King, I'd like to locate my store in Bowie. Can you write me a lease? No, I can suggest to Mr. Wolfley, here are some locations that fit your criteria, and work with him to get in touch with those folks if he's not already done. And most businesses don't choose to contact us. It's not productive to them or for them. It's productive for them to find somebody who can locate the space and conduct the transactional thing that we do. Our advertising serves to increase the brokers, the direct salespeople who have the contact with the business, to increase their awareness of Bowie and Bowie's opportunities, and to support the internal sales staff of each of those properties who are also trying to find those tenants represented by other brokers.
So do we not monitor the trends and the metrics of that? I mean, there's some way that you're justifying your ROI. So what is the return on investment of the $82,000 or any of this? If that's something that we're just not monitoring, that's okay. I'd just like for us to consider possibly start monitoring so we can justify how much we're allocating and why we may be spending X amount versus Y amount. So that's kind of like what I'm looking to understand is if we're monitoring those trends to understand if this is something that we may need to increase efforts here. Because I think to all of the residents and, you know, myself included, you know, the types of businesses that are reflected in Bowie is a big deal for all of us. So that's what I'm trying to understand. Are we monitoring those trends? Are those metrics that you're keeping an eye out for to understand? I understand that's not correlating in direct contact, like maybe a business reaching out to you saying, hey, John Henry, I want to come to the city of Bowie, but from a distance, can we say, okay, looking at Bowie Town Center, X amount of businesses have come over 6-month period and Y have gone to Collington Station and what that looks like for us to be able to justify this $82,000?
No, we don't measure that, and there are two reasons. One, the cost of developing measurement metrics on advertising is a large number, in the tens of thousands at the barest level, and it rapidly grows based on the more detail you want. And that's never been an avenue I wanted to explore very long in the tight budget times that we often face. I'd much rather take the advertising dollars and place them on the street in advertising at this level than ask for an increase to measure things that don't necessarily have a direct impact on us. That said, the monitoring of the ads is my staying in contact with our local brokers and asking about the deal flow. Does it generate deals? I'll give you an example. It's a COVID-related one. We have 2 major office properties in Bowie with big vacancies. One's Melford and one's 4201 Northview. At 4201 Northview, in the past 6 weeks, they have concluded 2 lease transactions with new tenants. One that admittedly was in play before the COVID lockdown throttled most industry, but a second one of equal size that was initiated and concluded since the lockdowns occurred. Partially that's a result of the advertising, in that the broker representing the tenant saw Bowie and said, well, let me call the broker representing the building and see if he's got something for my client. And it's happened twice. That's the anecdotal measurement tells me it has some effect. Is it going to stop? Is it going to reduce all of the vacancy? No, it's not. But it's reducing some. It continues to support. And it continues to make the brokers look at us because we do things differently. We're not trying to generate a call stream to us that we then parcel out to our friends or our favorite brokers. We're trying to generate call streams to those brokers who actually have to get a deal done. That helps us, I think.
Thanks so much for that.
Thanks so much, Mr. King. If I may, I just have a few questions for you. And let me start by saying that I did do a small business tour with the Bowie Vic and a couple other businesses in our area. And your pictures are all over the place. So you're doing a good job, especially with your grassroots presence in these locations. The first thing is more of a flag thing. When we talk about square feet office space in Bowie and the reduction that we faced from 20 to 21, and you did mention this a little bit with 4201. As you know, and we spoke about, I do have my full-time job in 4201 as well. Let's just make sure that we're monitoring this right as we, and I know you can put this on the record, as we are heading into this space of kind of big box retail, of kind of these office spaces kind of not really existing, and especially after COVID, I really do think working from home, the technologies that allow us to do that will diminish these places. Having tenants, let's just make sure we're monitoring that. 2 things for the objectives for fiscal year 2021 that I'd like to add. The first is just a continued monitoring of COVID-19 and making sure that we are just monitoring what we can be doing, and the EDC is doing what they have to do, as well as providing recommendations as things go by, right? Who knows what happens in September? As the CDC says, there may be a second wave. So let's just ensure that that is an objective and that we're monitoring what the economic impact is months after the governor's recovery plan for our state goes into order. The second thing that I'd like to see added to the objectives, it was a big talk, and I know we've spoken a little bit offline about this, but it was a big talk in 2018 during the election here in the state of Maryland, right? Prince George's County was identified as really one of the places where African Americans had advanced degrees in tech and computer science, and how companies like Google came to our area, and actually I think specifically came to Bowie for a press conference to look at what opportunities they had to move satellite locations, right? And as a county, we've had this conversation about Amazon, but I'd really like to see an objective or maybe a study about what we can be doing in partnership with Prince George's County, as I know the county executives focus on this as well, of bringing some newer tech companies here, bringing those new age businesses here, and what we're doing on that end. So those are the two things I'd like to see added to the objectives side of things. And my last question, the district itself, that is because of our employer here in the city, Novalon, do we have an update on how they are doing? Obviously, we want to make sure that their employees, many of whom live in the city of Bowie, are doing well. Do we have a sense of what they're doing on the business ends of things?
In the best of times, they are close-hold and reluctant to share information. This is not the best of times. I have yet to hear back from any of my folks in response to outreach electronically, telephonically, and by mail there. But we're still trying. We're still trying to make sure that they're doing well.
Cool. And as soon as you do, please let us know, and let us know what relief we can be doing again for one of our largest employers in the city. Those are all my questions. Again, thank you for the work you're doing.
Just a moment before we move any further. So, Mayor Pro Tem, you want to add an objective, monitoring the city of Bowie for COVID-19 effects on business. Is that correct?
Correct. And the second one as well.
Well, I know. Let's take the first one first. So that requires in order to add an objective, there have to be 4 members of the council that supports that. And so we want to handle that now with that particular objective. Are there 4 members of the council who are in support of adding this objective to the budget? Because,
You bet.
so, Mr. Mayor, you need to help me with that.
Okay, if we can, yes. Do we need to make that as a motion, Al?
Well, all I need, no, sir.
Just asking for willing to do it.
Sir, all I need is to know that that the Mayor Pro Tem and 3 other people on the council are in support of it, and then it goes into the adjusted budget. The proposed budget is what I presented here, but the changing of it requires you all to have a consensus. So I know we got Mr. Boffo. Are there any others that want to support that that objective that we mentioned before?
I would support that.
I'll support it as well.
So Roxy, DeFore, and the Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, well, that one's in. All right, the second one is to work with Prince George's County to attract tech companies to Bowie. Is that the objective, Mayor Pro Tem?
I really meant new age businesses, but yeah, businesses that focus on the degrees folks have that's highlighted both computer science and tech. Yes.
Okay, so you're breaking up there. So the answer is work with Prince George's County to attract companies that focus on science, computer science, and technology to the city. Is that right?
Correct.
All right, so do I have a consensus of 4 to change the proposed budget to include this?
I'll support that as well.
So I got,
Support. Likewise.
all right, got 4. Thank you very much. Any other questions for John Henry?
Shannon?
Yeah.
I was going to ask, is it possible under professional services, can you please add Bowie State University to that? That's something we need to vote on as well.
Well, but before we go that point, I'd like to know what will we be doing for Bowie State?
The same way that you support Small Business Development Center, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, Maryland Women's Business Center, and all of these other business efforts, Bowie State University also has the same efforts.
Well, right.
In the same.
I understand.
That's all under the Bowie BIC, which is housed on Bowie's campus.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
The business.
That's all supported by the Bowie Innovation Center, which is housed on Bowie State campus.
Okay, so let me add a clarification. When I had a conversation with Bowie State University 2 weeks ago, or no, I'm sorry, not 2 weeks ago, a month ago, that was not, they have a separate effort that is not housed under Bowie BIC. So that is why I'm asking to add that separately. But if you want to clarify that in terms of asking Bowie State and Bowie BIC, I'm happy to wait on that, but I'd like to see a tighter alignment with that. So that's where my comments are coming.
I'm going to pardon me, City Manager Lott. This is Councilmember Gardner. I want to chime in to what the council member from District 4 mentioned. Being that the Bowie State is not in the city of Bowie and the BIC is providing certain services and we're an exchange of information and resources, I don't believe, and this is just my opinion, my colleagues can follow in, that we would want to focus such efforts on Bowie State University itself.
Can I provide a point of clarification just as a question for John Henry King here? My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that Bowie BIC is housed at Bowie State University and will also be moving into the new building that they have at Bowie State University. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily help with the Bowie State. I know they do employ as interns, Bowie State students. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they support Bowie State as a broader ecosystem when it comes to business. Am I correct in that estimation?
Mr. Malfoy, it was difficult to hear you as your communication was breaking up a lot. Let me try and answer what I think I heard you say. The Bowie Business Innovation Center is our support to Bowie State University. We are one half of its funding support, and we caused it to be located at Bowie State University. It didn't just magically appear and go there. I sat down with a former dean of the School of Business, and we hammered out an agreement to land them there and be the seed around which they are now growing their own university-backed student entrepreneurial program. And that student entrepreneurial program is using the skills and programs that the Bowie BIC brought to the university and is using their ability to integrate the professorial support and to show the students a way they will be able to grow from the things they do as a student in the university's incubator into productive businesses that can one day challenge that of any of the great business leaders that have come from that school. So we're already supporting Bowie State University through that innovation center there. And that innovation center is going to be co-located. They'll be neighbors with the student learning and entrepreneurial center in the new building that's under construction. So I think we're already doing what the councilwoman has suggested. It's not called out because we don't directly fund Bowie State University. It is, why would we directly fund a state agency or a state entity? And why would we fund something outside the city that's
I think you would fund it because there are numerous amount of people who live within the city that attend college there, so it is building up our college students. So that's an answer to your question. Following up, I'm going to clarify that with a repetitive question. Does the Bowie BIC provide funding directly to Bowie State University for the amplification, the boasting, or the building up of the small businesses that are being created at Bowie State University? Does the BIC provide that funding directly? The information that I have conflicts that. So that is what I'd like to clarify. And if the answer is yes, then I'd like for us to double check that with Bowie State before we move forward. If the answer is no, I'd like to vote to add it in. And if the answer is no, we cannot vote on that, just please try to provide a justification on why that is so.
I can answer the first part, which is no. The Bowie Business Innovation Center does not fund the university. The Bowie Business Innovation Center does pay rent to the university, but I don't believe that would meet
So that
the idea of
not
funding.
It doesn't go towards their program for the small businesses that are being created at Bowie State University. That is my question. So the answer is no, right?
That is correct. It does not go to the university's small business effort.
Exactly. So I'm not understanding why we cannot include that under professional services. Is that something that you're, like, are we not able to take a vote on that? I'm trying to get a better understanding.
Let me chime in. Certainly, you know, if there's a destination for a donation or a grant to Bowie State, you all have the authority as the council and the persons in charge of the budget to direct that. So is it your idea? Do you want to include in the economic development budget a grant or donation to Bowie State's economic development operation? Is that what you're proposing, ma'am?
Yes, just like we are giving them to all these other business entities that are listing there.
Great.
I'm not understanding.
I got you. I understand that. Well, I got you. So how much money did you have in mind?
How much money, what is the breakdown of what you're giving these other organizations?
And where's the money coming from?
What's the breakdown of these, what these other organizations?
Well, the breakdown, how much, can you know the numbers? Yeah, we can give you the breakdown, just stand by. We contribute to the Bowie Beck for its operations,
This year, the grant to each of those entities is $7,500. The amount requested in the budget you are contemplating is $10,000 to each of those 3 small business assistance providers.
So is that what you're proposing, ma'am? A similar donation to that, to Bowie State in that respect?
No.
Not to speak for Councilwoman here, I think the point is that Bowie Bick is housed at Bowie State, right? And what we're hearing, and John Henry King, please provide me clarification if I'm incorrect, is that the Bowie Bick isn't necessarily helping incubators at Bowie State with the students in the entrepreneurship program. So not necessarily providing a financial and monetary donation on behalf of the city, but ensuring that the dollars that we're giving to Bowie Bick also enforces them to encourage the entrepreneurship program and things at Bowie State and those students who are at that university to continue to flourish. Am I speaking correct?
Exactly 100% what I'm saying. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Wapa.
All right, I want to make sure I understand. So there's no desire to make a specific donation to that student entrepreneurial entity, but you want to encourage Bowie Beck to support that entity with coaching, guidance, and such, or with money? Okay. We can certainly talk to Ms. Smith about that, and of course, she's scheduled to be here in June to give a briefing to you all, and at that point, you could certainly bring that point up with her, if you so desire.
Right, can you, Al, can you please explain how that, the recommendation that she's making will affect the budget? I'm not sure I understand what the account is, what the purpose.
I think that it would have no effect on the budget because we will be encouraging Bowie Beck to support the entrepreneurial efforts of the students on Bowie State. Excuse me, unless Ms. Smith feels that she requires additional funding to take on that mission. And that would, I can't speak for her, but we'd have to see in June when she comes in and talk to her and see what they're able to do.
So this would actually just be part of addition to the objectives?
Yes. it would be us asking Bowie Bick to take on another mission or a small mission.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, the councilwoman from District 4, she wants to have Bowie Bick expand its services, basically, to include the students at Bowie Bick, and the students at Bowie State. Okay, I could support that.
Yes, we can pass, we'll communicate with Ms. Smith and have her be prepared to discuss that when she comes in to see us and to talk to you all in the next 2 weeks, on the 1st of June.
Oh, let me be clear too. I wanted to say, I could support that if it doesn't cost any money. That's why I wanted to, let me make it clear.
All right then. Any other questions for John Henry?
Yes, I have some question, or a question here. This goes back to the performance indicators specifically associated with the occupancy rates and the total square feet. So, John, you were saying that there was a correction in both the total square foot available and the vacancy rate?
Yes, their data changed. I've got all of the detailed printouts, and I still can't figure out what it was that changed on it, but the numbers, the aggregation of it has changed. I think I should point out that these performance indicators are best used to track year to year rather than to be taken as a precise measure, given the challenges that the data sometimes presents. So it is accurate to see that there has been a slight growth in the space available, and there has been an increase, there had been a decrease in vacancy, and there is now a trend to an increasing vacancy. And again, to be very clear, the calendar year 20 column is an accurate measure as of January. The calendar year 21 is based on projected information from the database and other city records that may or may not come to fruition there. So the CY 21 is an estimate. The CY 20 is, as close as the data allows, an accurate point in time.
So if that's the case, the vacancy rate associated with the 7%, is that assuming an economic downturn or the arrival of new space on the rolls?
Arrival of new space.
Okay.
And that would include some of that which is coming at South Lake and at Melford, both of which at the time this data was generated indicated they were on track to deliver some space within the next fiscal year.
All right, but yet the total, the 3360, is a reduction of about 300,000 square feet. And I guess that's a data correction, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, appreciate it. It's amazing stuff.
One more quick question. Mr. Matthews, can you tell us how much revenue is generated for the city from apartment complexes as we look at the business revenues?
The city only receives housing and property inspection revenue from apartment buildings and single-family dwellings that are leased.
There's a personal property tax associated with that, though, isn't there?
Sorry, Mayor, I misunderstood what you said there. I don't have any select data on that. I would have to research that. The way we receive the information from the county breaks it down more granular, but I did not bring that information with me. I will provide that to you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Mr. King? If not, we'll proceed to page 76 and discuss emergency management. Lee Cornwell, I hope he's still out there. All right, so.
Thank you, King.
Thank you, John. You can go home and crash and burn now, right? All right. All right, so emergency management office plans, organizes, and directs emergency management programs for the city of Bowie and coordinates planning, organization, and execution of local emergency management activities. This office represents the community on all emergency management matters and coordinates activities with other local, state, federal, and nonprofit and private agencies. That office oversees the development and maintenance of annual reviews of emergency operations plan and other emergency preparedness plans as required, including, in addition, the office establishes and maintains and runs the City of Bowie's Emergency Operations Center. The second person that I hired when I got here in 16, the first was the IT director. The second one was Lee Cornwell as the emergency manager. And now he's the director of our emergency management, we're getting all he's got here with this. This emergency operations center has been operating for nearly 6 weeks now, and been the focal point for this COVID-19 pandemic that we're dealing with. The objectives and the results for fiscal year 2020: A was to enhance employee preparedness, public safety committee, and green team knowledge by conducting quarterly training programs to include topics such as CPR, infectious disease control, opioid overdoses, emergency preparedness, and incident management. Of course, this is a continuous program, and the Office of Emergency Management has attended 3 public safety committee meetings, 1 green team meeting, and an emergency preparedness workshop was conducted at the senior center with 50 attendees. 1 CPR, first aid, AED class for 6 staff members was conducted, and more are scheduled. The second was to evaluate the location of auxiliary external defibrillators, otherwise referred to as AEDs, to determine if they need to be expanded to additional city facilities, including city parks, and start replacing AEDs that have reached their life expectancy. 12 new AEDs were purchased in advance with advanced notification technology to replace expiring AEDs originally bought at beginning of the program in 2012. We also will be adding new AEDs to the police department lobby and 2 AEDs in the new Iceplex. Number C there on page 77, train emergency action plan, train staff on the emergency action plan for emergencies that may occur within the city. The office, in coordination with the police department, delivered excellent active shooter training to all staff, city staff. It was mandatory training, but very real in today's world, so people can survive these dastardly experiences. D, beginning quarterly training for Emergency Operations Center operations and management, and he instituted a monthly training drills for Web EOC and all Emergency Operations Center staff. Implement the tabletop or functional exercise for May 31st, and that was canceled due to COVID-19. There are some increases in numbers in the workload indicator, in particular the number of emergency preparedness packets distributed, and we intend to do 500 more than we did last year, and 50 more staff trained in CPR and first aid. For objectives for fiscal year 2021, develop a continuity operations plan for all departments to ensure essential city functions are maintained during a disaster emergency, and we're certainly working that out right now. Train emergency operations center staff on the operations of a new EOC. Enhance employee preparedness, public safety committee, and green team knowledge by conducting quarterly training program to include topics such as CPR, infectious disease, opioid control, overdoses, emergency preparedness, and incident command, a continuous program. Evaluate the location for the AED to determine if they are in need to be expanded to additional city facilities, including parks, and to start replacing those that are about to expire. Conduct an emergency response related function or tabletop exercise by 31st of May next year. And also, Lee, if you're still out there, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the final objective there, number 6.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone. Number 6 objective, we've been working with a security consultant to identify gaps in our physical and technological security within City Hall, Kent Hill Center, the Senior Center, Parks and Grounds Maintenance Building, and our DPW complex. That's been kind of put on hold because of the COVID response, but we want to have in hand a capital improvement project in coordination with our security consultant, so we can fill those gaps that are identified by our security consultant and move forward so we can ensure that we have a safe environment for our staff and all the visiting public.
Okay then, thank you, Lee. If you move to page 78, we've noticed that looking at our expenditures, there's 2 people in the operation. There's Lee and his assistant Stephanie, who is and they're both doing a great job in keeping us out of harm's way here in this crisis. Salaries are $163,059.3 on benefits. We have some money set aside for medical supplies, for shelter, disaster preparedness materials, citizen emergency response team, and training and supplies, and those things. Also, in others, under the program supplement, that includes the annual grant to the City of Bowie Volunteer Fire Department and to assist the CPR for Bowie, membership recruiting, fire prevention training, fund drive, disability insurance, incentive life insurance, and upgrade computer hardware, software, minor maintenance, and purchase of supplies at the station, vehicle insurance, membership uniforms, and emergency response vehicle supplies. And that concludes our discussion there. I'm happy to take questions and or suggestions or comments related to emergency management.
Hi, Mr. City Manager, this is Ingrid.
Yes.
I have a question. How will this budget change, or proposed budget change, based on what's going on with the pandemic? And what changes do you foresee adding into that? And that's for you.
That's a really good question. I'll defer to Lee on that. Lee, what do you think about that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the question. It's really broken up. I think the problem is when there's an open mic in the council chambers that we can't hear people that are at an alternative location. So, Councilwoman, if you could repeat your question, please.
Sure. Is this better? Okay, great.
Perfect.
So my question is, Lee, how will you adjust your objectives and your budget line items to show the impact of COVID and what the future impact will be, or projected impact will be?
Are you talking about the cost for the response of COVID, how we're going to move forward with paying for that?
Correct. And I see this as something that's not going away anytime soon. So how will that, how will you include that in your budget moving forward, or for 2021?
Well, hopefully we'll have enough PPE and the supplies that we need to bring the city back to a semi-normal operation. We are actively working right now to secure that PPE. We're getting supplies from the state, from Prince George's County, and through local vendors at the present time. Moving forward, we hope, or well, we don't hope, we know that once this event is over with, that we'll be getting funding from the federal government through FEMA and other revenue sources, different types of grants. We've been notified recently that the different counties and Prince George's County would be getting a large amount of money to handle the response of COVID. And that money will be distributed to the different municipalities also. So we should be realizing a financial impact from that. Once this is over, we'll have to get all of our finances together and everything that personnel costs and all the equipment and resources that we had to buy to respond to this operation, and submit that to FEMA to get back funding. What we do not know right now is how much funding we will get in terms of, is it going to be 100% reimbursement or a 75-25 reimbursement? And different grants will pay for different things at a different rate. So the guidance has not come down yet. We've just been notified that to keep all of your bills, all of your receipts together, track all your expenses related to the COVID-19 response. So when the time comes, we can submit for reimbursement for those payments.
Right, and as in general, your response to the whole pandemic for the city, will that be addressed in the final budget? So, I mean, I see where we talk about hurricanes and other emergency management procedures, but will we address how we have impact, or how we have addressed the COVID?
What we can do, ma'am, is if we can, I think I understand your point there. We can add, we should probably add an objective to the current, to the proposed budget to reflect the work that we're doing now and what we plan to be doing after July the 1st with the COVID-19. Right. Now, as it relates to funding, we believe that the current funding levels will support the operation of the EOC and the emergency operation team, and of course, you know, I'm prepared to use portions of my contingency fund, if necessary, to stabilize this division if by chance something happens. We don't anticipate that, but we're prepared for that.
Would the funding that comes from the county be reflected in the emergency management budget or somewhere else?
No.
It would go into the general fund, and it would have to be, I mean, it could be isolated and appropriated next year for emergency management, but generally it would go into the general fund.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, what we can do is add an objective too, because we've talked to all of the department heads already about writing down and documenting the performance of all the departments. So after this is all over, my plan is to conduct a comprehensive after-action review of this total event, what we did well and areas for improvement. And once that is done, there might be some financial impact towards that because we may have to buy different equipment, buy different resources, or obtain technology or even personnel to be able to manage an incident such as this in the future. So that after action review would be very important to determine what our gaps were in this response so we can better ourselves in the future. Maybe that answers your question a little better.
That's perfect. Yes, thank you.
Hey, Lee. I just wanted to take 2 seconds to thank you for the work that you guys have been doing, right? I mean, you and Stephanie have been working around the clock, especially in the midst of COVID. And so I just wanted to publicly thank you guys for the work you guys are doing, because I know it's challenging times for everybody, but especially for you guys who are getting to see those numbers, the increases happening in Prince George's County. So truly want to thank you and Stephanie and your team for all the good work you guys are doing. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I think all of the citizens and all of us do appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, and one thing I will add is I know that, Lee, when we kind of walked into this situation from the very beginning, none of us kind of had that expertise on how to really go about this, but you and your team really got in front and just kind of like really came up with ways to really update the council and work with the council and work to keep all of our residents safe. So really appreciate all the work that you've been doing. It's truly monumental to see the growth of your team and how you've been handling things. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Councilwoman. Stephanie and I really do appreciate your support and your guidance through this, because it's very important to us.
Okay then. So thank you, Lee. Next, we turn to page 87, and we'll review the Finance Department's budget. Okay then. The Finance Department functions to provide financial information needed for policy and administrative decisions. The financial information is used to assess the existing financial position of the city as a whole, or a particular fund, program, or department, to forecast the financial position over a given future time, or to monitor and control the flow of the revenues and expenditures, as to maintain accountability for funds, and to operate the city within legal and budgetary constraints. The objectives and results from FY 2020 were to maintain the city's Certificate of Achievement for Financial Reporting and Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. They submitted the Comprehensive Annual Report for the certificate and the Excellence in Financial Reporting Award. The current report conforms with the Certificate of Achievement requirements and has been submitted to the Government Finance Association. The city has received the Certificate of Achievement for the past 45 consecutive years, from 74 through 18. We expect that to stand up again. Received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the FY 2020 adopted budget. The city received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the last 25 consecutive years, since 96 to 2020. When you look at our workload and performance indicators, the first thing that jumps out is the bond ratings that we receive from Moody's, Standards & Poor's, and Fitch, which is a AAA. You might know that last fall, I believe it was, Byron and I went up to New York, and we, as we were looking to get the bond money for the Iceplex, we had to convince the individuals there that to retain our bond rating so we could use it for that bond, and that was effective on our part, and certainly a learning experience on how things happen in good old New York City. The objective for 2021, to maintain the City Certificate of Achievement for Financial Reporting and Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, and coordinate the annual budget process, fiscal year-end audit, and mid-year review presentations. Significant budget changes, as you remember from the water system and wastewater, there was a 0.5 FTE added to that particular budget. The other half of that full-time employee was added here as the accounting and technician, grade 108, at a cost of $26,267, and a new classification of a lead accountant of 0.8 FTE, 118 at a cost of $3,693. That person goes from a 117. If you move to page 88, you'll see that the full-time employees in the finance department is 10.8. There are actually 13, but the remaining number are actually categorized in the water systems budget for accounting purposes. Salary and wages, $843,700. Fringe benefits, $251,200. We pay $47,200 for the independent audit and accounting, and we share audit fees, cost of arbitrage, compliance and calculation services, Government Finance Officer Association of the United States and Canada, review of our comprehensive annual financial report, otherwise called the CAFR, and adopted budget. $74,000 provided for armor car services, bank fees, temporary actuaries, and such. And those are the major components of finance. Are there any questions about the finance division for myself or Mr. Matthews? If there aren't any questions for Byron, I'd like to hand this over to him so we can discuss the non-departmental component of the general fund.
Thank you, Al.
Page 151.
The non-departmental section for the general fund. This budget section provides for expenditures that are not directly or exclusively associated with specific activities or programs. It includes a debt service, counseling services, comprehensive insurance coverages, and allowances for contingencies, transfers, and other funds. The first section, you will see that there is a considerable increase from FY20's budget to FY21's budget, and that major increase is due to the debt service for the ICEplex. Small increase to our insurance cost. We've increased that by 5% for FY21. Professional services, consultant fees, insurance, employee benefits, and actuarial services. Other charges include the educational reimbursement for $30,000, incentive awards for $70,000, the reserve for contingencies, as Mr. Lott referred to earlier, $300,000, and reserve for personnel adjustments, $60,000. Also in this section is how we fund the capital projects fund and also the equipment acquisition fund. As you can see, $6.7 million for the for the capital projects fund and $2.2 million for the equipment acquisition fund. On page 53, we give you a display of the debt service schedules for all the outstanding debt for the city of Bowie. The first section is the public improvement bonds, the original bonds for the City Hall and Police Department, which were at $15.5 million. Those bonds were refunded in 2015 in order to receive a better interest rate on the outstanding maturities. So we have two sections of that bond. On page 154 is the debt schedule for the ice arena, and that was acquired early last fall when we issued those bonds and made the trip to New York. If there's any questions, I'd like to entertain them now, but I also would like to go back and address the mayor's question regarding apartments in the city of Bowie. Mayor, there's 3 major apartments in the city of Bowie. And what we try to do is look at the assessed value. So the highest one is Governor Green's. Their assessed value is about $91 million. It generates about $366,000 of revenue. And the lowest one is probably the Bowie. It's about $60 million. It generates about $240,000 of taxes.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, if there aren't any questions about debt service, that completes our assignment for the night. And we would have, next Wednesday, we would discuss the set the tax rate. And 2 weeks from that, our last department would be IT.
And planning.
And planning.
And we'll discuss the equipment acquisition fund and the general fund summaries.
Well, I'd just like to say, city manager, staff, thank you so very much for everything you did. Council members, thank you for your time and your efforts this evening. Do appreciate you all.
Have a great night, team.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right. Thanks, guys.